Part 11. Chess had a long history in America, yet they were now being defeated by other countries. Jessica Daimler had always been sore about this as the American Chess Association's president. Although she had beat all the other female chess players in the world, she still trailed behind the male players. But now, there was someone in America who could win a match against her. While it was humiliating for her, she now saw a glimmer of hope for the country's chess community. Jessica Daimler thought that this young man would definitely accede to her request since she was already humbling herself by bowing down to him as the American Chess Association's president. Never in a million years would she have expected to see Finn Taylor wave her off. "I'm not part of your chess community, and I have no interest in participating in some chess competition." Rejection. She had been rejected. Everyone was shell-shocked. Jessica Daimler had gone as far as to bow before him, yet he had rejected her. This young man is too arrogant. Didn't he just win a match? What's the big deal? But these indignant people had never once stopped to consider that in the chess world, winners were masters. Since Finn Taylor had won against Jessica Daimler, he had the absolute right to be this arrogant. Besides, he wasn't even being cocky. He simply didn't want to expose himself nor participate in that competition. Jessica Daimler spoke up once again. "Sir, the American chess community has fallen behind in recent years, and we've been constantly beaten by other countries. I hope that you'll be able to represent us." Nonetheless, Finn Taylor waved her off once again, expressing his refusal. Afraid of making a din, Finn Taylor simply left. Anyway, he had already accomplished his mission of the day. Once he left, Jessica Daimler turned to her disciple. "You'd better stay and handle this guy. Don't even think of coming home if you don't manage to convince him to represent us in the competition." Since Jessica Daimler had lost the match and taken a hit to her reputation, she naturally didn't want to remain in San Francisco any longer. However, she didn't want to lose such a talent like Finn Taylor either. As such, she left her disciple here. Megan Daimler was stunned, but she dared not go against her master's orders. "Carl Gillies, you should be clear of the situation the chess community here is in. You seem familiar with that young man earlier. Don't hide him all to yourself. You must introduce him to me." Of course, Carl Gillies didn't refuse. His feud with Jessica Daimler was a personal one, but against foreigners, both of them were in the same camp. Ellipsis. As soon as Finn Taylor left the Chess Association, he bumped into someone who he had least expected to meet: Maximus Bruegel. This person is an elder of Peregrine Hall. Why's he in San Francisco? "Come with me." Maximus Bruegel said only 3 words, but Finn Taylor dared not disobey him. Since he was young, Maximus Bruegel had imparted a great deal of knowledge and skills to Finn Taylor. It was very much thanks to the former that the latter had gotten this far. The former led Finn Taylor to a hotel. On the top floor, the pair stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down toward the whole San Francisco. "San Francisco is big, but it's also small at the same time," Maximus Bruegel said vaguely. "Master, do you really still acknowledge me as your master?" "Master, my feud with the Taylor family has nothing to do with you. But I'm still part of Peregrine Hall." "Master, did they send you here?" "It was your grandma Frida Cameron." "No, I don't have a grandma." "What does she want?" "She wants you to return home to take over Peregrine Hall and become the next Master Peregrine under Donovan Taylor's name." Finn Taylor's eyes were full of fiery hatred. "Why, I have already left the Taylor family in Peregrine Hall. I have already told myself never to cross paths with them again. Why aren't they willing to let me go? Now, I'm not even allowed to have my own name. We are biological brothers twins, yet our treatment in the Taylor family is like night and day. Was I born just to be that person's shadow?" Maximus Bruegel pointed at the drawer by the bed. "There's a telescope in there." Finn Taylor walked over and took it out. "Look over there." He picked up the telescope and looked in the direction Maximus Bruegel was pointing in. Through the telescope, Finn Taylor could see Yvette Larson and Clarine Landon laughing while they sat by the window in a Starbucks outlet. Just then, a chilling gaze flashed past Finn Taylor's eyes. That's right, he had seen a man in black walk past his wife and her best friend, and on that man's clothes was the clear embroidery of Peregrine Hall's logo. "Master." Finn Taylor clenched his fists and gritted his teeth, his expression extremely sour. "Don't worry, nothing will happen to them, but take this as a warning from your grandma. You have only a week to decide whether to return. Make your choice." The anger on Finn Taylor's face gradually dissipated. He put the telescope down and chose to take his leave after bowing to Maximus Bruegel. "Frida Cameron, why are you still so biased? Donovan Taylor is your grandson, but am I not? It's obvious that he went missing because he offended too many people, thinking Peregrine Hall had his back. People are probably after him, so he has no choice but to go undercover and lie low. But why do you want me to live under his name? Do you really want me dead? As long as I'm dead, Donovan Taylor's enemies will probably think that he's dead and forget all about their feud. Good plan, what a great plan. I'm his twin, and nobody can tell us apart. More importantly, you've never liked me, so I've never attended any of the Taylor family's parties. Apart from those closest to us, nobody even knows about my existence. Great, it makes perfect sense. To achieve your goal, you're going as far as using my wife to threaten me. Thoughts flooded Finn Taylor's mind as he headed home. Eventually, he decided that he had to make the trip to Chicago to meet his so-called grandma, Frida Cameron. Just as Finn Taylor arrived home, his wife did as well. Did you go to Starbucks? Yvette Larson stared at her husband. Were you following me? No, I'm asking if you went to Starbucks. Yes, I did. So what if I did? At least it's better than going to La Feria Club, right? Was it peaceful in Starbucks? Was anyone fighting? Did you get hurt? Finn Taylor, what do you mean by that? Do you hope that I was hurt? I'll be going to Chicago for the next few days. Before I come back, stay at home. Don't go anywhere, not even the office. Yvette Larson smiled. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to restrict my freedom? Finn Taylor knew that he wouldn't be able to convince her. All right, I'll just have to get the 4 guardians to protect her 24/7. Just then, he heard someone outside ask, "Is Mr. Taylor at home?" Finn Taylor and Yvette Larson had already been in a fight. When the latter heard that yet another young lady was looking for her husband, she couldn't help feeling anger rise up within her. Good, how amazing, yet another young lady, come on, invite her in. I want to see where you got another vixen. The young lady pressing the doorbell outside was none other than Megan Daimler. She glanced at Finn Taylor. Because he was dressed plainly, she had always thought that he was just an average person. Yet, she had found out that he lived at number 1 Pacific Heights. This wasn't somewhere just anyone could live in. But after asking around, she learned that Finn Taylor was the Larson family's useless matrilocal son-in-law. In an instant, she was dumbstruck. How could a useless matrilocal son-in-law stay at number 1 Pacific Heights? Where are you from? You're quite beautiful. Finn Taylor, your eye for women is getting better. Megan Daimler was only here to invite Finn Taylor to represent the country on the international stage, but it now seemed like the other woman had misunderstood her intentions. No, I think you've misunderstood me. I just want to. Yvette Larson had no intention of listening to the other's explanation. There's no need to explain yourself. All right, I think it isn't right for me to stay here. I'll leave the two of you to talk alone. With that, she left. Finn Taylor was terribly annoyed and wished he could kill his subordinate. Didn't I go to La Feria Club to save you? Look at what's happened. The misunderstanding is only growing. Finn Taylor was afraid that he wouldn't even be able to clear his name anymore. Mr. Taylor, have I done something wrong? Megan Daimler asked him a little fearfully. Although Finn Taylor had his own troubles, he was a reasonable person. Besides, this had nothing to do with her. Come on in. Finn Taylor invited Megan Daimler in and even poured her a cup of tea. Mr. Taylor, I'm here for the same matter. Master instructed me to stay here until you agree to return to Chicago with me. Finn Taylor nodded. All right, I'll follow you back to Chicago in a few days' time. Megan Daimler had already expected the other to reject her ruthlessly. She had already been prepared to go all out to persuade him, but she hadn't even said anything before Finn Taylor agreed to her request. What she didn't know was that she was in luck. To be honest, Finn Taylor never would have agreed to her request no matter how hard she tried to persuade him otherwise. But now, he had no choice but to return to Chicago. Since he had to return, he had to give his wife an excuse. Of course, that excuse couldn't have anything to do with the Taylor family. Going to Chicago for an international chess competition made for a great excuse. Although I'm agreeing to this, I won't accept your invitation just like this. I want your master to send me an invitation from the American Chess Association. Megan Daimler didn't think twice before nodding in agreement. That's no problem at all. It's only right that I do that. All right, you can leave. After they finished their discussions, Finn Taylor sent her off. I need to put my affairs in San Francisco in place. Before I leave the city, I will have to make the necessary arrangements. As such, he headed for Hunter Sullivan's house and gathered the 4 guardians. He simply told them that he needed to return to Chicago. As for why he was doing so, Finn Taylor didn't bother telling them. You can investigate it if you're capable enough. Finn Taylor made himself very clear. He was leaving San Francisco in their hands for the time being. If anything happened, they would be brought to question. The four guardians nodded fervently, swearing that they'd do their utmost to protect the city. Following that, Finn Taylor visited some sentries in San Francisco. Only after finishing all that did he return home. The next day, Megan Daimler visited him once again. This time, she had come with an official invitation from the American Chess Association. The entire family was around, and Finn Taylor handed the invitation to his wife. "I need to make a trip to Chicago." Yvette Larson took the invitation over and analyzed it. "It's real." She glanced at Megan Daimler, understanding that she had maligned her the previous day. In an instant, she felt embarrassed. "About that, I'm so sorry about yesterday." Megan Daimler didn't want to interfere in the couple's affairs and assured the other that it was fine. Then, the topic of their conversation veered toward chess. "Ms. Larson, Mr. Taylor is very talented in chess. We've always been suppressed by other countries, so we really need his help. Please agree to this." Yvette Larson waved her off. "Don't bother asking me about that. He can decide for himself. Who am I to make that decision for him?" Finn Taylor was frustrated, but he didn't want to let his relationship problems be known to outsiders. "Dad, Mom, please take care of Yvette while I'm in Chicago." Francis Larson naturally had no problem with that, but his mother-in-law started throwing a tantrum. "Hold on, what do you mean? Do you mean you're running away? Diane Taylor is missing. If you leave, who'll do the household chores then?" Ever since Diane Taylor had been hospitalized, Finn Taylor had been the one taking care of all the household chores. But now that he was leaving as well, Linda James would have to take over that responsibility. Of course, she refused. However, Finn Taylor ignored her. He didn't even try to answer her. This annoyed Linda James even more. "Hand your money over." Linda James walked up to Finn Taylor and demanded his money. "What do you mean?" Finn Taylor felt that the situation was absurd. What's she trying to do this time? "Aren't you leaving? All of your money belongs to our family. You're not allowed to take even a single cent away from our family. Leave all your money here." Finn Taylor simply replied, "Lame." It was Megan Daimler's first time experiencing Linda James's unreasonable behavior, and she was dumbfounded. Even the latter's daughter couldn't hold it in anymore. "Mom, can you stop embarrassing yourself?" "Embarrassing myself? What do you mean? He's trying to steal money from our family. Do you really think that he's right? Finn Taylor, why don't you tell us? For the past 3 years, you've been living on our family's accounts. Have you worked or earned a single cent for our family? Who knows if you'll return after leaving this time? You'd better leave all your money behind." It wasn't just Yvette Larson who couldn't understand that logic, even her husband couldn't. How much could Finn Taylor possibly have eaten or drunk in the past 3 years? He has always been helping out around the house as well. Besides, could all that possibly be more expensive than number 1 Pacific Heights? Yvette Larson and her father both knew that trying to reason with Linda James was futile. As such, neither of them wanted to speak to her, much less Finn Taylor. This meant that Linda James went on a monologue for a long time while the others ignored her. Ellipsis. Yvette Larson couldn't understand why she felt a sense of longing after her husband had left. "I should be utterly disappointed in this man, but there's been only one thought in my mind since he disappeared from my sight: I miss him." Finn Taylor had followed Megan Daimler back to Chicago, not Maximus Bruegel. Naturally, this meant that he headed to the American Chess Association with the latter upon reaching Chicago. There, he spotted Jessica Daimler, who was grateful that the former had agreed to represent their country in the competition. Then, they exchanged their contact numbers, and Jessica Daimler told him that she would inform him of the details closer to the date. Finn Taylor left the association and arrived in front of a company named Felicity. "Ask Felicity Rouge to come and meet me," Finn Taylor told the receptionist the moment he arrived. In an instant, the whole lobby fell into silence. Felicity Rouge was the company's boss and was known as Queen Felicity in Chicago. How dare this young man call Queen Felicity by her name and even ask her to meet him? He's so disrespectful. Does he have a death wish? Kick him out. The receptionist could tell that Finn Taylor was dressed plainly. Someone like this is obviously a vagrant at the very lowest ranks of society. How can someone like him ask to meet Queen Felicity? If Queen Felicity finds out about this, we'll be dead. It's best to just kick him out now. Seeing that they were about to get violent with him, Finn Taylor couldn't help but sneer. "Are you sure you want to beat me up?" The receptionist laughed. "What, can't I? Are you Queen Felicity's husband or her boyfriend?" Finn Taylor shook his head and answered earnestly, "I'm her father." "Bullshit. Queen Felicity was idolized by everyone in the company. It naturally sounded as though Finn Taylor was insulting her, so nobody could hold themselves back anymore. A few security officers quickly rushed up, wanting to beat Finn Taylor up. What's all this fuss about? The elevator doors opened just then, and they heard a voice. When they heard that voice, their faces blushed, and they backed down in fear. It was none other than Queen Felicity. She wasn't someone to be trifled with. She was definitely a vicious character within Chicago's business circle. In the short span of 3 years, she had risen up from an insignificant character to being able to stand on the same level as the city's top-tier families. Of course, she had used underhanded and vicious methods to get to where she was. Nobody even knew how many people had died in her hands. Everyone knew only one thing: don't provoke Queen Felicity. All they could do now was hope that she wouldn't get mad. You're such a big shot now. I'm about to get thrown out just for asking to meet you. Finn Taylor, who was surrounded, finally spoke up. The moment he did so, everyone's hearts fell. If he offends Queen Felicity, we might very well get dragged into it as well. Yet, Queen Felicity didn't flare up. Her face was filled with panic, and she rushed over, pushing everyone aside. Then, she looked closely at Finn Taylor. Mr. Taylor, you're back. Oh, am I not welcome here? Finn Taylor's reply scared Queen Felicity stiff. Of course not. You're always welcome here. 3 years ago, Queen Felicity had been nothing more than a hostess at a nightclub. It was then that Finn Taylor had spotted her. He told her that he was about to establish a company in Chicago and needed a spokesperson, and she was his top choice. At that time, she had thought that Finn Taylor was mad. However, he had used only 10 days to kill every single one of those who had once humiliated her. Even after 3 years, those images were still fresh in her mind. From then on, she became Finn Taylor's spokesperson. Felicity Incorporated was now one of the largest companies in all of Chicago, but Queen Felicity knew full well that it was all thanks to Finn Taylor's support that she had come so far. Without him, I would have been dead a long time ago. How dare my subordinates offend him today? She was in a frenzy. Thud, Queen Felicity fell onto her knees in front of Finn Taylor, not caring about her own dignity. Mr. Taylor, I've been loyal to you and have been protecting this company for you. Good, good, good. Finn Taylor seemingly praised her and continued, Here, I'll reward you with some burgers made from offal. With that, someone brought a box in. Finn Taylor opened it. Inside was a burger made from offal. It was a revolting sight. Everyone's faces were tense as they looked at Queen Felicity, wondering if she would actually eat it. Queen Felicity is a powerful lady who has the whole company under her command. Would she really be afraid of this young man? Queen Felicity is going to explode. This young man is done for. Queen Felicity stared at that burger, caught in a dilemma as she wondered whether to eat it. She considered her options. If I eat it, I might die. But if I don't, I'll surely die. Without any hesitation, Queen Felicity picked up the burger and stuffed it into her mouth, clearing the entire box. Finn Taylor was pleased with what he saw. 3 years ago, he had already predicted that the Taylor family would chase him out of Chicago. However, he was sure that he would eventually return. This was why he had set up a company and kept some of his men here. But now that 3 long years had passed, he wasn't sure if these people would still remain loyal to him. As such, he had to test them one by one. Queen Felicity's performance pleased Finn Taylor. Not bad, it was a normal burger, you passed my test. Ah, Queen Felicity let out a huge sigh of relief as she collapsed onto the ground. As expected, I made the right choice. Thank God I ate that burger, otherwise, I'd be a corpse by now. Finn Taylor headed to Queen Felicity's office, where she took out the company's reports for him. However, he waved her off. You don't have to let me see them. I know all about the company's financials, including whatever you've taken for yourself. You're still alive because what you've taken is still within my permissible limits. In an instant, Queen Felicity's back was drenched in sweat. Queen Felicity was flabbergasted. I thought that Finn Taylor wouldn't know anything about the company's affairs since he hasn't been in Chicago for 3 years. Besides, I've always been very careful. Not a single person in the company knows about what I've done, but he knows everything. He really has everything under his control. Ellipsis. Chicago, the Taylor family. Frida Cameron's gaze was set on Maximus Bruegel. Mr. Bruegel, didn't you say that you'd bring him back? Maximus Bruegel's gaze was meaningful. He's back, he just hasn't returned to the Taylor family's residence. Frida Cameron was overwhelmed with emotions. He's back, everything will be much easier to handle now. At that moment, Wendy Jensen glanced at Frida Cameron. Mom, do you really have to be so ruthless? That old lady pounded her walking stick on the ground. Are you feeling remorseful? You'd better mind your own business. Wendy Jensen was dejected because the old lady was about to do something she didn't want to see. After everyone had fallen asleep that night, Finn Taylor took his first step into the Taylor family's residence in 3 years. He pushed his room door open. As he switched on the lights, he saw everything covered in a thick layer of dust. Nobody had entered his room in 3 years, much less cleaned it. It was as though he didn't even belong to the family. Finn Taylor could only shake his head while cleaning the room up. The second day, the old lady spotted her grandson in the living room as soon as she woke up. "You unfilial thing, how dare you not come home immediately to greet me once you return to Chicago? Where have you been?" The old lady was sure that Finn Taylor had crawled onto some woman's bed the previous day since he hadn't returned home. And now, he wasn't even taking the initiative to greet her. The old lady had grown up in Chicago and was extremely traditional. In her opinion, she was the Taylor family's eldest and the most senior member. That meant that everything she said was the law, even if it was wrong. Finn Taylor was just a young man. He was wrong to go against her or rebuke her. "Did you call me back just to pretend to be him? It'd be an honor for you." The old lady's eyes were filled with viciousness. "Should I thank you then? Do you not want to do that? You should know what will happen to that woman in San Francisco if you refuse." The old lady was threatening Finn Taylor, and that was exactly what he hated the most. Clank. Finn Taylor slammed a dagger on the table. "You should very well know that I can kill you right here and now." The old lady stumbled and took a few fearful steps back upon seeing that dagger. "Are you going to kill me? I'm your grandma." "Is that so? I think you previously said that I'm not worthy of being your grandson, so why have you suddenly become my grandma?" In this tense atmosphere, Maximus Bruegel walked over. "Finn Taylor, put away your dagger." On Maximus Bruegel's account, Finn Taylor finally picked up his dagger and put it away. "Ma'am, do you still remember what you promised me?" The old lady remained silent in contemplation. 10 minutes later, she finally spoke again. "Ask them to return. Give the command. Nobody from Peregrine Hall is allowed to touch that woman." Maximus Bruegel nodded. "I've finally managed to defuse this tense situation. Give your dagger to me. I'll give the order right away." Maximus Bruegel reached out toward Finn Taylor, who handed the dagger to the former without any hesitation. He had only used it to scare the old lady. He wouldn't even need any weapons if he really intended on killing her. However, he had never even considered doing so. He didn't want to bear that responsibility for the rest of his life. Besides, that old lady hadn't apologized to him. She couldn't die just yet. "Tomorrow, you'll officially take the title of Master Peregrine in Donovan's name. You'd better not mess up." The old lady was still a little hesitant. Initially, her plan had been to kidnap Yvette Larson and bring her to Chicago. Once she had Yvette Larson, she wouldn't need to be afraid of Finn Taylor doing anything funny. However, Maximus Bruegel had argued with her for a long time. They eventually reached a compromise, which led to the current situation. It was an unhappy reunion for Finn Taylor and the old lady. However, the former had already expected such an outcome. The news of Donovan Taylor returning to the Taylor family and was going to be appointed as Master Peregrine spread throughout Chicago. There were 4 most prominent families in Chicago: Ferguson, Crawford, Hamilton, and Mackenzie. These 4 families were also the 4 most powerful families in the city. Now, these families' heads were in discussion. Russell Ferguson, "That brat from the Taylor family is back." Elijah Crawford, "Yes, I thought he was dead." Andrew Hamilton, "The Taylor family has probably committed too many sins that the heavens are punishing them now. Jacob Taylor died, and his son is a good for nothing. I think this is the end for Peregrine Hall." Edward Mackenzie, "You shouldn't say that. We're part of Peregrine Hall after all." Andrew Hamilton, "You're not wrong in saying that, but I've never sworn loyalty to the Taylor family." Elijah Crawford, "We're no match for the Taylor family for now. We'll just have to wait for that old lady to die. Once she does, it'll be our chance to rise up and take our piece of the pie." Russell Ferguson, "Since we're already talking about this, I'd better say my piece. When that time comes, we'll fight it out together. Don't you dare try to play any dirty tricks." Edward Mackenzie, "Of course. The 4 of us were the most insignificant families out of all 100 families in Peregrine Hall. It was only because we formed an alliance that we're way above all of them today. Speaking of that, I don't understand why Jacob Taylor sent the Sullivan family to New York, the Scott family to Seattle, and the Kennedy family to Washington. He left only the Yates family here in Chicago. The Yates family, they are not even in Chicago anymore." I heard that they're in San Francisco now. I really don't understand what's in the Taylor family's minds. Who cares? If they were still here in Chicago, do you think we'd have the chance to have our day? You're right, without their help, the Taylor family could only rely on other families. I bet they don't even know that we're not loyal to them. In reality, all four of Chicago's most prominent families had already started rebelling against the Taylor family. Of course, the Taylor family was clear about this too. Yet, there was nothing they could do about it. Jacob Taylor had been gravely ill, Donovan Taylor was incompetent, Wendy Jensen was powerless, and Frida Cameron was old and weak. The Taylor family was at the end of their road and was no match for the four families. Now, they were only just barely holding onto Peregrine Hall as well. A war was bound to break out between the four families and the Taylor family one day. The succession ceremony of Master Peregrine proceeded as planned. All the prestigious families of Chicago had practically fought each other for a place at the ceremony. It was a flamboyant affair. After all, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. At the sight of such an awe-inspiring scene, the four families of Chicago put off the idea of fighting against the Taylor family for now. It seems like it isn't time yet. We don't have a high chance of winning the war. Under the old lady's watchful gaze, Finn Taylor took his seat as Master Peregrine under the identity of Donovan Taylor. Then, each family went forward to pledge their allegiance to Finn Taylor and Peregrine Hall. Naturally, Finn Taylor took their words with a huge pinch of salt. At the end of the ceremony, Frida Cameron, Wendy Jensen, and Finn Taylor had a family meal. The old lady let out a kind smile, expressing her satisfaction with her grandson's performance today. She even said that she would definitely treat him well in the future as long as he kept up his performance. Finn Taylor couldn't help but sneer inwardly. The old lady is obviously insincere with her words. Since when has she ever thought of me as her grandson? Ever since I was born. Her acting is terrible. But Finn Taylor felt drowsiness overwhelm him just then, and he collapsed onto the table. Before he blacked out, his gaze was exceptionally vicious. This family meal was the last chance he was giving the Taylor family, yet they had still let him down. The old lady placed her finger under Finn Taylor's nose. Realizing that he was still breathing, she exploded. What's going on? Didn't I tell you to put poison in it? Why did you swap it out for a drug instead? This was an important move to the old lady, but it was one Wendy Jensen hated to see. The former wanted Finn Taylor dead. Since Finn Taylor had already accepted the title of Master Peregrine in Donovan Taylor's name, he had to die to keep this a secret. Only then would Donovan Taylor be able to live under Finn Taylor's identity once he returned. Although she felt terrible getting Donovan Taylor to live under an assumed identity, he would still be able to live without any enemies. Besides, he would have the title of Master Peregrine in Peregrine Hall's history if even just for a single day. Yet, all her plans had been ruined by Wendy Jensen. The latter fell onto the ground. Mom, he's my son. I can't bear to do that. Besides, I think it'll be more beneficial to keep him alive. Think about it, Mom. Donovan has just been crowned Master Peregrine. It'll definitely spark suspicion if he suddenly dies. Why don't we just lock Finn Taylor up in the dark pool for now? He must be useful to us in the future. The dark pool she spoke of was a private prison. Many who offended prominent figures in the business world would suddenly disappear. It was possible that they were still alive, locked up in the dark pool. There, they lived a life worse than death. They were neither fed nor clothed well. One had to defeat those around them to survive. It was survival of the fittest. Wendy Jensen's heart ached to send Finn Taylor there too, but that was the only method she could think of to save her son. The old lady was deep in thought and finally nodded in agreement after a long time. Ellipsis. When Finn Taylor awoke, he found himself in a small room. There were dozens of people there, and every single one of them had a revolting stench from not showering for a long period of time. Seeing that Finn Taylor was finally awake, someone kicked him and pointed at a basin on the ground. Drink it. Finn Taylor looked in the direction that man was pointing in and saw a basin of urine. This was a rule of the dark pool. Newcomers had to drink urine in front of everyone else. This was because everyone here had been humiliated. Nobody was sure when anyone would ever leave this place or whether the person who left would talk about what the others had been subjected to while there. However, they were sure that nobody would ever talk about drinking urine. If anyone dared to say that they'd ever been to the dark pool, it would be no different from admitting to drinking urine. These few dozen people had their eyes glued to Finn Taylor, with ridicule in their gazes. All of them here had drunk urine before. If Finn Taylor refused to do so, they'd simply swarm up, beat him up, and pour the entire basin of urine into his mouth. Scram! Nobody was surprised by Finn Taylor's refusal. In fact, they grew even more exhilarated. Ah, oh, ha ha ha, they let out piercing screams as they rushed up to surround Finn Taylor. Of course, the latter wasn't going to let them have their way. With just his fists, he beat the entire gang up into a pulp. Within a minute, groans were all that could be heard in the room. The entire group was now lying on the ground. Finn Taylor roared, "Hurry up and drink this basin of urine." As he said that, he smashed his fist against the door. It was a solid metal door, but Finn Taylor had left a deep dent in it. Everyone was shivering in fear. If Finn Taylor had punched them with even a fraction of that strength earlier, their organs probably would have ruptured. They crawled up and formed a line, obediently taking a sip of urine one by one. With just his fists, Finn Taylor had established his position in the dark pool. The next day, the old lady came to visit her grandson. Bulletproof glass separated the pair. The old lady didn't spot any injuries on Finn Taylor, much less a sense of despair in him. That confused the old lady. "Did you not drink any urine?" Finn Taylor glared at her. "I'm sorry to disappoint. Are you so used to being a matrilocal son-in-law that you kneeled down to them the moment you went in? Why don't you come in and ask them yourself?" The moment Finn Taylor said that, the old lady took a few steps back. "There is no way I'm heading in. The dark pool is filled with the most ruthless of criminals. These people lost all humanity a long time ago. They feel that they are free to do whatever they want since there is no chance of them getting out. Nobody cares about their statuses outside. Once they entered the dark pool, all of that meant nothing. You'd better not die in there. Otherwise, your mom would have begged me for nothing." Finn Taylor didn't reply. He felt conflicted when it came to Wendy Jensen. Ever since he was young, he had been ill-treated. Yet, his mother had never once come to his rescue. But it was also true that she had protected and stood up for him on several important occasions. Finn Taylor wasn't sure if she was indeed biased. As the old lady left the dark pool and returned to the Taylor family's residence, she spotted someone at the door. Her whole body was frozen, her hand trembled, and her heart thumped. She was overwhelmed with emotions. The person in front of her was none other than Donovan Taylor. The old lady was overwhelmed with emotions, and her whole body shook. She couldn't help herself. Her precious grandson was finally back. "Grandma, I'm back. I'm sorry for making you worry. It's good that you're back. Come on in." The old lady quickly picked Donovan Taylor's hands up. This was something Finn Taylor had never experienced. At the age of 7, Finn Taylor had tried to take her hand into his, but he had been scolded and slapped instead. The old lady even said that trying to hold her hand was no different from trying to drive her to her grave. She was biased and unreasonable, yet nobody in the Taylor family dared to do anything about it. That was why her grandson Donovan Taylor was being pampered now. There was a world of difference between how the brothers were treated. "My precious grandson, where have you been? I've missed you so much." Donovan Taylor kneeled down on the ground. "Grandma, it's my fault for making you worry." He was a sweet talker and knew how to charm Frida Cameron. Seeing her grandson kneel down, Frida Cameron's heart ached. She quickly pulled him up. "All right, it's all good now. Everyone knows that you're Master Peregrine now, but the Taylor family has sent you to the dark pool to train you. Even if anyone wants to take revenge on you, they'll go to the dark pool and make trouble for that piece of trash." Donovan Taylor was anxious. "Grandma, it doesn't seem good for Finn to bear that responsibility for me." Frida Cameron was hardened by his words. "I was right about you. You're too kind. However, you have to remember that you're different from him. Do you remember how I brought you both to a fortune teller when you were 6? The fortune teller told me that you're a saint who would bring the Taylor family to greater heights while he's a demon who's only here to bring our family down. All these years, you've been so outstanding. You're only being hunted down now because other people are jealous of you. Take a look at him. He's been called a piece of trash and a matrilocal son-in-law all these years. The Taylor family is so lucky to have you but also unlucky to have a jinx like him." Frida Cameron had always taken that fortune teller's words to heart. It was the latter's words that had sparked the differential treatment of the Taylor brothers. "Grandma, can I still stay in Chicago?" Everyone thought that Donovan Taylor was in the dark pool now. It would definitely throw them off if he were to appear in Chicago now. "No, Grandma will think of a way to kill that jinx. We'll then organize a grand funeral for him. We won't shortchange him for coming here. Once everyone is sure that he's dead, you can make your appearance." The moment the old lady saw Donovan Taylor, she had already thought of an idea. She was going to use Finn Taylor's death to return Donovan Taylor his freedom. "Grandma, I want to go to San Francisco." "San Francisco?" Frida Cameron pondered the possible consequences of her grandson heading to San Francisco. All right, you can go to San Francisco, but try to use his identity. Try not to get caught. Of course, Donovan Taylor was nothing but obedient in front of his grandma. He wouldn't rebuke her no matter what she said. But just then, Wendy Jensen and Maximus Bruegel walked in. Upon seeing her son, Wendy Jensen asked in surprise, "Finn, why are you back?" But Maximus Bruegel shook his head. "I'm afraid he isn't Finn Taylor." Donovan Taylor glared at him. "He's still biased toward Finn, he can see through me with just one glance. It seems like I can't keep him around, but Maximus Bruegel has a special position in Peregrine Hall. It won't be easy to get rid of him." "Not Finn." Wendy Jensen was a little confused, but she suddenly thought of a possibility. "You're Donovan." Donovan Taylor stood up. "Do you not care about me anymore, Mother? Why are you so shocked that I'm back?" The entire Taylor family cared most about him, yet his mother had always chosen to take a neutral position. This naturally annoyed Donovan Taylor, and that was why he had said that. "Donovan, how can you speak to your mother like that?" Maximus Bruegel chided Donovan Taylor, but Frida Cameron came to his defense. "My grandson is right, you're not even acting like a mother, so why should your son respect you? Wendy Jensen, you should understand that Donovan is the Taylor family's only hope. Donovan is a gift from the heavens, the other one is just a jinx." Maximus Bruegel simply shook his head. "It was just a quack who said that he's a jinx. Why do you still hold on to that belief after so many years? It's been so many years. Haven't you seen all the good things Timothy has done and all the mistakes Donovan has committed?" Frida Cameron hit her cane against the ground. "How dare you, Maximus Bruegel, the Taylor family respects you, but that doesn't mean that you can let your mouth run loose here. You're in no place to scold my precious grandson." Precious grandson. Maximus Bruegel could only shake his head helplessly. There's nothing that will ever convince someone who's unwilling to see the truth. The next day, Donovan Taylor boarded a flight to San Francisco. At that moment, Finn Taylor was still in the dark pool. Today, they had received yet another newcomer in the room. His name was George Jones, nicknamed Batman. Legend had it that he could fly. Of course, that was just a myth. There was no way humans could fly. He was only here because of Finn Taylor. "You're here." Finn Taylor glanced at George Jones, who quickly bowed to the former. George Jones was the former's subordinate as well. He was here to bring Finn Taylor out of this place. It wasn't exactly false that he could fly. He had advanced martial arts skills, but even that was enough to help Finn Taylor leave this place. "Boss, I have some news." Finn Taylor nodded before waving his hand at the others in the room. They all headed to the bathroom. They knew that Finn Taylor was discussing some confidential matters with the newcomer. They would simply be asking for a beating if they were to remain there. The bathroom in the dark pool was downright filthy, and the stench was unbearable when dozens of them stood there together. However, they had no other choice. "Boss, Donovan Taylor is back." "Huh, that's a shocking piece of news. He's been in hiding for such a long time, and he's finally back just because I'm in the dark pool now." "Boss, I saw him heading for the airport before I was caught, but I don't know where he's flying to." The moment he heard that, Finn Taylor felt his heart leap out of his chest. He thought of only one place: San Francisco. Donovan Taylor is back, but he left Chicago. Where else would he go? There's only one place: San Francisco. Since Frida Cameron's plan was for me to act as my brother, it's only natural for Donovan to take my place for his own safety. Finn Taylor could only hope that he was wrong. Otherwise, the consequences were unimaginable. He couldn't even imagine how Donovan Taylor would treat Yvette Larson once he reached San Francisco, given his personality and temperament. Chicago, the Taylor family. Wendy Jensen kneeled before Frida Cameron. "Mom, I'm begging you, bring Donovan back. How can you let him go to San Francisco and pretend to be Finn Taylor?" Wendy Jensen had known nothing about this plan until her second son went missing. She had only found out after asking Frida Cameron about it. At that time, Wendy Jensen had been fuming. How could such a thing happen? "What, you seem upset about me letting him go to San Francisco. Wendy Jensen, although we let that person pretend to be Donovan, you should know that there are many in Chicago who know Donovan well. Do you want Donovan to die by showing up in Chicago now?" Frida Cameron made an excuse for her actions. She thought that she was absolutely right in doing so. "Mom, there are many other ways we can keep Donovan safe, like keeping him at home or sending him abroad. Why did you have to send him to San Francisco and ask him to pretend to be Finn Taylor?" "So what if I did? That jinx might be a piece of trash, but he knows a lot of people in San Francisco." They'll naturally get suspicious if he goes missing for a long time. Mom, given Donovan's personality, if he goes to San Francisco, will something happen to Finn Taylor's wife? Humph, that Jinx's wife is just a countryside bumpkin. Do you think Donovan would fall for her? Even if they do anything, Donovan must have been forced into that situation to protect his identity. It'd be an honor for that country bumpkin. Wendy Jensen didn't even know how to reason with her mother-in-law anymore. It'd be an honor for her husband's brother to fall for her. Liking Donovan is one thing, but how can she have such warped worldviews too? San Francisco, the airport. Donovan Taylor walked out of the airport and casually dumped a stack of papers into the trash can. These were all documents on Finn Taylor's life in San Francisco. He had finished reading them on the plane. He was just about to walk out when someone yelled out, "Finn Taylor, you're back." Donovan Taylor was still unused to that name. Hence, he continued walking without stopping. Clarine Landon was confused. Why is he ignoring me? As such, she ran up to Donovan Taylor. Hey, are you deaf? Why didn't you hear me calling you? Donovan Taylor was stunned. It was only then that he realized that the other had been calling for him. But how dare she call me deaf? How bold. Just as Donovan Taylor was about to flare up, Clarine Landon said, "Diane Taylor has been discharged. I've helped you clear the misunderstanding between you and Yvette, so shouldn't you treat me to a meal?" A meal? Donovan Taylor laughed slyly. What good luck. After eating, shouldn't we head to a hotel? I never expected Finn Taylor to know such beautiful women in San Francisco. I thought he'd be living a pathetic life, but it seems like that isn't the case. All right, where to? Clarine Landon couldn't help but feel that something was strange about Finn Taylor today, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Then, she brought Finn Taylor to a place she frequented. As soon as Clarine Landon finished ordering, she handed the menu to Donovan Taylor. The latter didn't even glance at it and simply said, "Let's have a bottle of red wine." You want to drink wine? Clarine Landon thought it was strange. She had never seen Finn Taylor drink. Finn Taylor didn't like drinking alcohol. After all, he had been in dangerous and precarious situations too many times in his life. Thus, he had to remain sober at all times. Of course, Donovan Taylor couldn't care less about that. Besides, he wanted to order wine so that it'd be easier for him to do what he wanted. Only by getting Clarine Landon drunk would he get his chance. I'm just trying to thank you. Let's celebrate with some wine. Clarine Landon didn't find anything wrong with this explanation. As such, she decided not to pursue the matter. Very quickly, the dishes and the wine arrived. Donovan Taylor was an experienced playboy and continuously picked food up for Clarine Landon. That intrigued Clarine Landon even more. Finn Taylor really feels different today. Is it just me, or is he really acting differently today? After the pair had drunk some wine, Donovan Taylor suddenly reached out to grab her hand. Because Clarine Landon had already thought that her best friend's husband was behaving strangely today, she had kept her guard up. Now that he was doing something like that, she sobered up immediately. Finn Taylor, what are you trying to do? What do I want to do? Sleep with you, of course. What did you say? Stop pretending. We're all adults. Why are you drinking with me if you don't want to sleep with me? Clarine Landon picked up her glass of wine and splashed it on Donovan Taylor. Finn Taylor, don't you feel bad for Yvette for saying something like that? I'm her best friend. With that, Clarine Landon ran off in a frenzy. Donovan Taylor looked at his drenched shirt, his blood boiling. Fuck, stop pretending. Best friend, there are tons of people who cheat with their best friends' partners. I'll let you go today, but just you wait and see how I'll deal with you once I catch you. Donovan Taylor tidied his shirt up, paid, and headed toward Pacific Heights. If her best friend is already this beautiful, I can't wait to see just what Finn's wife looks like. Clarine Landon ran all the way home, only letting out a sigh of relief when she finally arrived home. She had truly been shocked earlier. She couldn't understand why Finn Taylor had suddenly changed so drastically that she couldn't even recognize him. I have to tell Yvette about this. The moment the call got through, she asked, Yvette, have you realized that Finn Taylor has been acting strangely recently? Yvette Larson paused. Do you mean that he's gone to La Feria Club again? No, I'm talking about his personality and attitude. Has anything changed? Yvette Larson thought carefully about it. Although she had been suspicious of Finn Taylor, his attitude toward her had never changed. No. All right, but I'm reminding you to keep an eye on him. He's back, but he was really fierce to me just now. Clarine Landon didn't dare to delve deeper into the matter and simply said that Finn Taylor had been fierce toward her. However, Yvette Larson seemed not to have heard that. Her focus was on how her husband was back. He's back. That's great. She had fought with him for a long time before he had left. But after he left, Yvette Larson realized that she was feeling much lonelier. She thought long and hard about how her husband had gone to La Feria Club. Did he really go there to do that? But if he's someone like that, why would he endure humiliation in the Larson family for 3 years? Besides, he had ample opportunity to do that with me if he really wanted to. Why did I have to doubt him? The matter with the Gold family is even easier to explain. I was blinded by my jealousy. It's obvious that Kimberly Gold likes Finn, but Finn only thinks of her as a friend. This short separation had cleared Yvette Larson's mind of many things. She had decided to forgive him. Their relationship couldn't stand up to much more testing. She packed up her things and prepared to head home. Donovan Taylor walked out of the restaurant and headed for Pacific Heights. When he was halfway up the hill, several security officers lined up and bowed respectfully to him. Donovan Taylor was taken aback. He had never expected Finn Taylor to be treated like this in San Francisco. Didn't the rumors say that he's just a useless matrilocal son-in-law? Why would a piece of trash be treated like this? When he arrived at number 1 Pacific Heights, he was even more surprised. Why is it so luxurious? I had to live in hiding, and I couldn't even eat or sleep well. Why should that piece of trash be able to live in such a luxurious house, be treated so well, and even know such beautiful women? What right does he have? In an instant, Donovan Taylor exploded with jealousy. I'm going to ruin this all. He walked into number 1 Pacific Heights and saw 2 old people sitting on the sofa. By their side, a young girl was cleaning up the place. On the flight here, he had already seen the photos and knew that these 3 were Finn Taylor's father-in-law, mother-in-law, and the family's helper Frances Larson, Linda James, and Diane Taylor. Oh, you know to come back. I thought you were dead. Because of Finn Taylor's departure and Diane Taylor's absence, Linda James had been forced to do the household chores for a couple of days. As such, she was full of resentment and lashed out at her son-in-law the moment she saw him. Shut up. Yet, Linda James had never expected Finn Taylor to rebuke her like that. Instantaneously, the air in the room froze. Finn Taylor has never dared to rebuke me, yet he has done so today. What is going on? What did you say? Linda James was still in disbelief and was about to reprimand him when Donovan Taylor strolled up. Slap! A thunderous sound echoed in the room. 3 pairs of eyes were glued to Donovan Taylor. The atmosphere was stiff. What's going on? Finn Taylor hit someone, Linda James. But he's acting like nothing has happened. Donovan Taylor lay on the sofa, turning to Frances Larson. Get me a glass of water. Frances Larson was a coward, but he never backed down when others bullied his wife. Finn Taylor, have you gone mad? Slap! Yet another thunderous sound reverberated as the former's hand landed on Frances Larson's face. Now, there was only fear in the air. Frances Larson, Linda James, and Diane Taylor looked at him in terror. Didn't you hear me? Get me a glass of water. I don't want to repeat myself again. Diane Taylor rushed to the kitchen to get a glass of water. Clank! Donovan Taylor smashed the glass onto the ground, and the shards scattered all over the ground. Are you stupid? Did I tell you to get me water? I told him to get me a glass of water. I don't want to repeat myself a 3rd time. By this point in time, they were all terrified. Frances Larson was so fearful that he quickly poured a glass of water and respectfully placed it before Donovan Taylor. However, the latter didn't reach out for it. He simply said, "It's too cold." Frances Larson was a little annoyed, but thinking about the 2 slaps earlier, he changed it for a glass of hot water. Still, Donovan Taylor refused to drink it. It's too hot. Frances Larson got another glass of warm water. Nonetheless, Donovan Taylor refused to drink it. He pointed at it and said, "I'm not thirsty. I just want to tell you that I'll have the final say in this house from now on. I don't want to hear any complaints once I've made my decision." Donovan Taylor's words stunned everyone. They were all confused as to why Finn Taylor seemed like a different person after returning from Chicago. Just as Diane Taylor finished picking up all the broken shards of glass, Yvette Larson returned. Seeing a palm imprint on her parents' faces, she chuckled and asked, "Did you 2 get into a fight?" They pointed at Donovan Taylor simultaneously. "He was the one who hit us." Yvette Larson rolled her eyes in disbelief. If Finn Taylor dares to hit them, pigs will be able to fly. Yet, Donovan Taylor admitted to it. "That's right, I was the one who slapped them. They refused to listen to me, so they deserved it. Also, I want you to remember that I'm the head of the house. If you don't listen to me in the future, I'll hit you too." Yvette Larson had returned home with her heart full of love toward her husband, yet she had been greeted with this. She suddenly remembered her best friend telling her that Finn Taylor had returned as a different person. What's going on? Finn Taylor, what do you mean by that? Nothing much, I just don't want to be a useless matrilocal son-in-law anymore. I want everyone to know that I'm a man who can lead this family. The moment Donovan Taylor set his eyes on Yvette Larson, his heart had leapt with joy. He couldn't wait to spend the night and sleep with the latter. Diane Taylor, clean up the room. I want to take a rest. Diane Taylor glanced at Yvette Larson. Finn Taylor had 2 rooms in this house. One was the room upstairs that he shared with his wife, and the other was the guest room downstairs. She didn't know which one Finn Taylor was talking about, but Yvette Larson pointed at the one downstairs. Thus, Diane Taylor headed to clean that room up. Yvette Larson had already decided to accept her husband, but this was no longer the same man she knew. Yvette Larson was disheartened. There is no way I'm going to let him into my room. As Donovan Taylor walked into the room, he was confused. What's going on? Why does this family sleep on the ground floor instead of the rooms upstairs? Only late into the night did Donovan Taylor finally understand what was going on. I've been tricked. This isn't the room Yvette Larson is staying in. I've waited for you for a whole night for nothing. Donovan Taylor flared up. He started to look for Yvette Larson's room, and he heard someone sobbing just then. This must be Yvette Larson's voice. I guess this is her room. Thinking about how beautiful she had been earlier in the day, Donovan Taylor subconsciously swallowed his saliva. Finn Taylor, that bast. I thought he'd been humiliated by marrying into the Larson family, but look at this. He's staying in a luxurious mansion and is respected by everyone. He even has such a beautiful wife, but I was living my life in hiding outside. The stark difference made Donovan Taylor terribly jealous of his twin. Good, I'm going to ruin everything Finn Taylor has and brag to him about it. I wonder how he'll feel once he learns of it. Donovan Taylor forced his way into the room and switched the lights on. The sudden burst of light made Yvette Larson feel uneasy. She tried to shield herself from the light to adapt to it when someone suddenly pounced on her. Yvette Larson dodged instinctively, only to realize that it was Finn Taylor. Why are you trying to hide? I want to let him know that I've slept with his wife. Yvette Larson had been crying all night while thinking about how she had also been bullied over the past 3 years. It had been such a struggle for the couple to get to where they were, yet they had gotten into a huge fight over La Feria Club. Now, she had finally thought it through and was going to forgive her husband, but he had undergone such a drastic change. Yvette Larson had sobbed her eyes out. But now, Finn Taylor was trying to force her to sleep with him. Thankfully, she had sharp ears and heard Donovan Taylor muttering to himself. Let him know that him he's talking about must be Finn. Then, this person must not be Finn. You're not Finn Taylor. Who are you? Yvette Larson screamed and shoved all her things onto the ground. The noise woke all 3 of the others in the house. When they saw Donovan Taylor trying to rape Yvette, they quickly picked up the items and threw them at him. Of course, Donovan Taylor was nowhere near as skilled as his twin. As the trio beat him up, he could no longer stand the pain and quickly escaped. Only when Donovan Taylor left did the remaining 4 of them breathe a sigh of relief. Linda James shouted, Finn Taylor, that bast. How dare he hit me? Now that things had progressed to such a stage, Yvette Larson believed that her mother had been telling her the truth earlier in the day. But if that person isn't Finn, who is he? He looks identical to Finn. What's he doing here trying to act as Finn? If he's not Finn, where's the real Finn? After deep contemplation, Yvette Larson finally thought of someone: Hunter Sullivan. Finn Taylor had been humiliated for 3 years and had only started rising up because of Hunter Sullivan's company. Besides, Hunter Sullivan always seemed to be present whenever something happened to them. For some reason, Yvette Larson felt that there was something going on between them. Once day breaks, I'd better ask Hunter Sullivan all about it. Having been chased out of number 1 Pacific Heights, Donovan Taylor was dejected. He quickly got into a sports car that was parked at the foot of Pacific Heights. His grandma had gotten someone in San Francisco to prepare it for him the previous day. Donovan Taylor slammed down on his accelerator, and the car flew off. Thankfully, it was late at night, and there weren't many cars on the road. Otherwise, he would have caused a major accident. While there weren't many cars, that didn't mean that there were absolutely no cars. As Donovan Taylor sped forward, a car was headed in his direction. Both drivers slammed on their brakes. Hiss. They were both luxury cars and had stopped just in time. Donovan Taylor got out of his car and knocked on the other car's window. The moment the driver got out, Donovan Taylor threw a punch to the other's face. Fuck, do you have a death wish? Donovan Taylor shouted as he punched the other driver, and he even landed a kick on that man. Then, he sauntered off. As Donovan Taylor walked off, that man wiped the blood from the corner of his lips. He narrowed his eyes, feeling extremely conflicted. This man was Sean Gold. His father was Third Master Gold, and his daughter was Kimberly Gold. He had met Finn Taylor at the banquet, but they had only brushed shoulders with each other and hadn't interacted much. It was only because his daughter said that she liked this man that he had started paying more attention to him. However, he had never expected them to meet for the second time under such circumstances. He has such a hot temper. Is it because he was too pampered, or was he just born like that? Suddenly, Sean Gold didn't think it was such a good thing that his daughter liked this man. After returning home, he sat in the living room, waiting for Third Master Gold to wake up. Third Master Gold had the habit of waking up early to exercise. "Dad, I have something to ask you." Third Master Gold was quite pleased with his son. Although Sean Gold was nowhere near as capable as himself when it came to handling company affairs, he was reliable and open to taking suggestions from others and ran the company well. "What happened to your face?" In Third Master Gold's memories, his son was a good kid who had never fought with anyone. "I nearly got into an accident last night. The other driver punched me." "Was it your fault?" "No, it was his. He was speeding and ran a red light." Third Master Gold frowned. How unreasonable. He was speeding, ran a red light, almost caused an accident, and still punched the other driver. "Dad, you know that man too." "I know him. Who is it?" Third Master Gold was even more curious about that crazy man. "Finn Taylor." "Finn Taylor." "Yes, Finn Taylor." "Finn Taylor." Third Master Gold's expression was stiff. "That can't be. Finn Taylor has always been very humble and respectful. If Sean is right, I'd never have agreed to Kimberly wooing him." But Third Master Gold understood his son well. He would never lie to his father. Besides, this would be easy to investigate. Could it be that Finn Taylor has been putting on an act in front of me? Third Master Gold felt a sudden chill run down his back. If that's the case, Finn Taylor really is too scheming. My precious granddaughter will never have a blissful life if she were to marry him. What are you guys talking about? By then, Kimberly Gold had woken up too. Seeing that her grandpa and father both had awful expressions, she couldn't help but ask out of curiosity. "Ask Finn Taylor out. I want to meet him." "Oh, that's just as well. I haven't met him in a while." "You don't have to go, I'll go meet him with your father." Kimberly Gold wanted to refuse, but she realized that her father was trying to meet his son-in-law. Suddenly, she grew anxious. "Dad, Finn Taylor is a good person. Don't put him on the spot." "Put him on the spot? It'll be good enough if he doesn't put me on the spot. Don't you see the injury on my face? It's all his fault." However, Sean Gold appeared to agree to his daughter's demand on the surface. All right, I won't put him on the spot." Donovan Taylor had never thought that this near accident would lead to this series of events. Ellipsis. Over at the Larson family, Yvette Larson had finally waited until the break of day. Then, she rushed out to look for Hunter Sullivan. Thankfully, Hunter Sullivan lived at Pacific Heights too. Although every property at Pacific Heights was private property and entering would be trespassing, Yvette Larson was the owner of number 1 Pacific Heights. The property managers of Pacific Heights knew her, so nobody dared to stop her. They simply thought of this as the rich having their usual meetings. When Yvette Larson arrived at the Sullivan family's residence, Hunter Sullivan was still asleep. It was the helper who opened the door for her. "Hello, I'm looking for Mr. Sullivan." The helper was a little confused. "May I get your name?" Usually, Hunter Sullivan would always let the helper know in advance if he was expecting a visitor. However, he hadn't told her anything this time. "I'm the owner of number 1 Pacific Heights." Yvette Larson. Afraid that the other would chase her out, she quickly identified herself. As expected, this identity was terribly useful. Upon hearing this, the helper quickly invited Yvette Larson in and poured the latter a cup of tea. There, Yvette Larson sat and waited for 2 hours before Hunter Sullivan finally woke up. The moment he saw Yvette Larson, all drowsiness disappeared. It was Master Peregrine's wife he was looking at after all. "Why are you here, Ms. Larson?" "I'm sorry for disturbing you, Mr. Sullivan. I have something to ask you." "Oh, go ahead, Ms. Larson. I'll help you as much as possible." Logically speaking, our positions should be reversed. Could this have something to do with Finn? Yvette Larson thought it was strange for Hunter Sullivan to be treating her so politely. "Mr. Sullivan, I want to ask you how much you know about Finn. Isn't Finn Taylor your husband?" Hunter Sullivan thought that this situation was incredulous. Why is she asking a business partner about her own husband? Someone who looks identical to Finn appeared in our house yesterday, but his personality is nothing like Finn's. When Hunter Sullivan heard that, he felt his heart thumping rapidly against his chest. He thought of only one person, Donovan Taylor. Please hold on, Ms. Larson. He dared not make any decision regarding Donovan Taylor. He made a call to Logan Yates, Alexander Scott, and Zachary Kennedy. All three of them were visibly shaken when they heard that Donovan Taylor had shown up in San Francisco. Very quickly, they arrived at the Sullivan family's house. At that, Yvette Larson couldn't help realizing that her husband wasn't just an average person. The Yates family of Chicago, the Sullivan family of New York, the Scott family of Seattle, and the Kennedy family of Washington, though they all know Finn. Ms. Larson, we suspect that that man is Finn Taylor's twin brother. After a short discussion, the four guardians eventually decided that they couldn't tell Yvette Larson the full truth. How could they reveal something that even Finn Taylor hadn't? Yet, it didn't seem right to keep her completely in the dark either. Twin brother. Yvette Larson had never heard her husband mention a twin brother. But from what had happened yesterday, it did seem likely that her husband had a twin brother. What is Finn's family background? Why did the old master insist on me marrying him? Why did he even say that it'd be the best thing in my life marrying him when he was on his deathbed? And to think of what Finn's done. Buying number 1 Pacific Heights and knowing prominent figures like Logan Yates, Hunter Sullivan, Alexander Scott, and Zachary Kennedy. There's more than meets the eye. Was I really wrong about him? Ms. Larson, we suggest you move out of number 1 Pacific Heights in case that person returns. The four guardians remembered clearly what Master Peregrine had instructed them to do before leaving. If anything happened to Yvette Larson, they'd be done for. Yvette Larson gave it some thought and felt that they were right. As such, she quickly returned home to pack up her belongings. When Clarine Landon opened her door to see her best friend with suitcases of all sizes at her door, she was stunned. What, is your house on fire? TCH, can you not curse me? Why are you moving out of number 1 Pacific Heights to stay with me? I ran into some trouble. Yvette Larson moved her belongings into the house. Then, she told her best friend all about what had happened the day before. After hearing about what Finn Taylor had done, Clarine Landon finally understood what had happened. The person she had met wasn't Finn Taylor. No wonder I thought that person didn't seem like Finn Taylor at all. It was all a beautiful misunderstanding. Ellipsis. The dark pool. Finn Taylor stepped out of the dark pool and stretched his bones. The old lady thought that I'd die here after she locked me up here. What does she know? I've trained so many people and started keeping so many people by my side since I turned 6. The dark pool might seem like hell to others, but it's nothing to me. Finn Taylor had to make a trip home. He had to find out where his twin brother had gone. Ellipsis. Chicago, the Taylor family. A shadow kneeled before Frida Cameron. She turned toward that shadow. I'll send you to the dark pool. That person is very sly, so you'll only have one chance. The shadow replied somberly, I understand. Of course, the person Frida Cameron was talking about was none other than Finn Taylor. This shadow was an assassin that Peregrine Hall had cultivated. He had never missed a single shot. The shadow stood up and headed out, but the old lady heard a blood-curdling scream just then, followed by blood spurting all over. What's going on? Then, someone appeared before her. When she caught sight of the bloodied man in front of her, she felt nothing but fear. Why are you here? Shouldn't you be in the dark pool? How did you get out? Just a second ago, the old lady had sent someone to kill Finn Taylor. But the next moment, Finn Taylor had killed that person. The former was even standing right in front of her. This was a huge shock to the old lady. Finn Taylor walked up to Frida Cameron. This terrified the old lady, and her gaze was filled with terror. She suddenly spotted someone in the room, and she calmed down right away. This person was none other than Maximus Bruegel. He walked into the room and glanced at Finn Taylor. You're out. Yes, master. Finn Taylor had to respect the brains of Peregrine Hall. Maximus Bruegel had taught Finn Taylor a lot. Without him, the latter never would have gotten to where he was today. All right, do what you want then. Finn Taylor nodded and walked out. With master here, I won't do anything to my grandmother. But if that old lady still doesn't know her place, I will let her know what regret tastes like. Seeing that her grandson was gone, Frida Cameron finally let out a sigh of relief. Do you still think that Finn Taylor is a piece of trash? The old lady put on a calm and composed face in the face of Maximus Bruegel's question. It's only because I had nobody to protect me earlier that I felt threatened by Finn Taylor. Otherwise, there would be no way I would have ever gotten afraid of that piece of trash. I said that he's a jinx who's here to ruin our family, Just because of what that monk told you. Have you ever thought about it? Don't you think someone bribed that monk to say that so that the two brothers would be pitted against each other and try to kill each other? Are you joking with me? Do you really think that someone set this up? It would have taken decades for them to know if they'd even succeed in their attempt. Maximus Bruegel sighed inwardly. Peregrine Hall had been so powerful, and the Taylor family had been unrivaled. It isn't impossible for someone to try to take the Taylor family down by setting up a trap that would play out over several decades. But by now, Frida Cameron is already clouded by her own irrationality. She isn't going to listen no matter how much anyone else tries to convince her otherwise. After leaving the Taylor family's residence, Finn Taylor headed straight for the airport and flew back to San Francisco as quickly as possible. As for the old lady of the Taylor family, she didn't remain idle either. The next day, word got around that Donovan Taylor had disappeared from the dark pool. Very quickly, the people that Donovan Taylor had offended geared up once again. Suddenly, Donovan Taylor's life was in danger. Of course, the old lady was never going to take that lying down. She boarded her private plane for San Francisco. On the one hand, it was to warn that piece of trash Finn Taylor that he'd always be the Taylor family's jinx. On the other hand, it was also to pick Donovan Taylor up. No matter how much those people hated Donovan Taylor, there was no way they'd dare to make trouble at the Taylor family's residence. After all, the Taylor family still helmed Peregrine Hall. Upon landing in San Francisco, Finn Taylor rushed toward number 1 Pacific Heights. His heart was pounding in his chest. Although he hadn't said anything about this in the Taylor family's residence, he had already obtained his answer from his grandmother's expression. Donovan Taylor had indeed come to San Francisco. Finn Taylor was terrified that his wife would mistake his brother for him and that something would happen. But what greeted him at number 1 Pacific Heights was Diane Taylor chasing him out with a broom. He was stunned, but he instinctively caught the broom. "Diane, what are you doing?" Because she hadn't struck him down, Diane Taylor was trembling in fear. After all, Finn Taylor had sent chills down her spine just the day before. "Diane, did someone who looks identical to me come over? What did he do to you guys?" Although Diane Taylor didn't understand him, she backed away, not daring to say a word. Hearing the commotion, Francis Larson and Linda James headed out as well. When they spotted Finn Taylor, fear was written all over their faces. At that very moment, Finn Taylor was certain that his twin had visited their house. Otherwise, there was no way Linda James would be so afraid of him. "Diane, come here, tell me where Yvette is." Of course, Diane Taylor wasn't going to reveal anything. She stood by Linda James and Francis Larson. If Finn Taylor dared to do anything to them, they would charge forward together to beat him up. The family's son-in-law was in despair. "It seems like I'm not going to get anything out of them." As such, he decided to look for Hunter Sullivan. Ellipsis. At the same time, Yvette Larsenho was hiding at her best friend's house. Opened the fridge. She turned to Clarine Landon helplessly. "Is there nothing left to eat?" Clarine Landon gave a sheepish smile. She wasn't in the habit of cooking at home, so it was only natural for the fridge to be empty. At the very most, there were some drinks stocked up there. Yvette Larson had turned up here in complete fear and had even told her best friend all about what the fake Finn Taylor had done to her. This scared the two women so much that they dared not take a single step out of the house. Yet, they had eaten everything they could possibly eat at home. Now, they had no choice but to go out. Thus, the two women put on their hats and masks, glancing around carefully before heading out. But as soon as she opened the door, Clarine Landon let out a piercing scream, and Yvette Larson quickly shut the door. That fake Finn Taylor was right at their doorstep. "Damn it, how did that guy find us?" Finn Taylor rubbed his nose as he waited by the door. "It looks like Yvette was hit hard." "About that, I'm real," Finn Taylor said, not knowing if his wife would understand what he was saying. But he had to clear the air that previous Finn Taylor wasn't him. "I don't understand what you're saying. His name is Donovan Taylor, he's my younger brother. My real name is Timothy Taylor." Yvette Larson caught the general idea of what her husband was getting at. For some reason, the man outside felt familiar. Her instincts told her that he was the real one. As such, she walked up and was about to open the door. That was when Clarine Landon slapped her hand. "Don't open it, who knows if that person outside is the real Finn Taylor? What if he's lying to you?" Clarine Landon glanced outside and yelled out, "Prove yourself." Finn Taylor frowned. "Prove myself? How am I supposed to do that?" After giving it some thought, he finally spoke up. "As two become one, I take you with your faults and your strengths. I offer myself to you with my faults and my strengths. I will help you when you need help and turn to you when I need help. I choose you as the person I will spend my life with. Yvette, marry me. Upon hearing this, Yvette Larson stiffened. Those words were all too familiar to her. They were the words Finn Taylor had said to her when he had won the prize at the Larson family's outing. At the thought of that, Yvette Larson couldn't help but think of that fat sum of prize money. It was supposed to be theirs, but her grandpa Joseph Larson had said that it was only right for the money to go to the Larson family since they had gone on the outing together. As such, the money was still at the Larson family's residence. At that moment, Yvette Larson was sure of the identity of the person outside. He was the real Finn Taylor. Yvette Larson pushed the door open, and her tears uncontrollably fell as her eyes met her husband's. You're back. What took you so long? Why are you only back now? Yvette Larson rushed into her husband's arms as she pounded his chest. In an instant, all of their previous misunderstandings melted away. Finn Taylor stroked his wife's hair and comforted her. Don't worry, I'm here. Nobody will dare to bully you anymore. With her significant other's assurances, Yvette Larson finally put her heart at rest. Come on, let's go home. Finn Taylor picked up his wife's hand, and they headed for number 1 Pacific Heights. When their car arrived at the foot of Pacific Heights, Finn Taylor received a message from Hunter Sullivan. Previously, Finn Taylor had instructed Hunter Sullivan to look for Yvette Larson and Donovan Taylor. He wasn't going to let the latter off. He had already held it in for decades. Over the years, he had let the latter off on account of their blood relations. But this time, his brother had gone too far. Hunter Sullivan's message was to inform him that Donovan Taylor had been caught. Finn Taylor's gaze darkened as he read the message. How many years has it been? I've been humiliated in the Taylor family and have been treated so unfairly and badly, all because of him. A saint and a jinx. I'll see how a saint. Donovan Taylor goes down on his knees to beg me for mercy today. What's wrong? Yvette Larson could sense that something was amiss. Her sixth sense told her that something major was going to happen. I'm going to deal with someone. Yvette Larson didn't try to stop her husband and only said, be careful. Then, she got out of the car and walked toward number 1 Pacific Heights. Finn Taylor couldn't help but feel moved as he watched his wife walk off into the distance. No matter what happened, this woman had always chosen to stand on his side without fail. He slammed on the accelerator, flying toward the address that Hunter Sullivan had sent him as rage pulsed through his veins. Donovan Taylor was being locked up in a small, dilapidated hut. His whole body was trembling, and it was clear he was flustered. Hunter Sullivan, do you have a death wish? Don't you know who I am? Hunter Sullivan stood before Donovan Taylor and landed a slap on his face. Finn Taylor, when are you going to return the money that you owe me? Donovan Taylor felt his blood boil. Hunter Sullivan is nothing but a dog that Peregrine Hall owns. How dare he slap Master Peregrine? Bast, how many times have I told you that I'm not Finn Taylor? I'm Donovan Taylor. Hunter Sullivan, you're from Peregrine Hall too. Can't you tell us apart? Hunter Sullivan landed another vicious slap on Donovan Taylor's face. Stop bullshitting. Who in Peregrine Hall doesn't know that it's Finn Taylor who's in San Francisco? Donovan Taylor is in the dark pool. The latter was on the brink of tears when he heard that. He quickly explained, No, I offended too many of my enemies, and they're after my life. Grandma got Finn Taylor to live under my name so that he could inherit the title of Master Peregrine. She even sent him to the dark pool and spread news about it to fool my enemies into thinking that I was in the dark pool. On the other hand, I secretly came to San Francisco to pretend to be that piece of trash. Hunter Sullivan pretended to be shocked. Are you really Donovan Taylor? But aren't you afraid that you'll kill Finn Taylor by doing this? Donovan Taylor rolled his eyes. That piece of trash is a jinx. So what if he dies? To the Taylor family, it won't be any different from a dog dying. It's no big deal. Is that so? Just then, a stern and domineering voice sounded throughout the room. Upon hearing this, everyone in the room including Hunter Sullivan fell on their knees. Finn Taylor strolled over. Hunter Sullivan was still on the ground as he greeted, Greetings, eldest young master. Eldest young master. Hunter Sullivan's words were a rude awakening for Donovan Taylor. Hunter Sullivan was toying with me this whole time. He knows exactly who I am. He was just pretending not to know so that I'd be scared. Hunter Sullivan, you bast. Finn Taylor helped Hunter Sullivan up as he nodded at the latter. Then, his gaze fell on his brother. Long time no see, saint. His emphasis was on the word, saint. It was full of sarcasm, but unfortunately, Donovan Taylor didn't pick up on that. Humph, since you know that I'm a saint to the Taylor family, you'd better hurry up and let me go. I'm going to tell Grandma about this. Let's wait and see how she deals with you. Hunter Sullivan simply shut his eyes the moment he heard those words. How could there be such stupid people in this world? Finn Taylor and Donovan Taylor may be twins, but they're worlds apart. One of them is a ferocious tiger stalking its prey, while the other is just a useless stray dog. Beat him up. That was all Finn Taylor said. The men behind Hunter Sullivan rushed forward and started kicking and punching Donovan Taylor fiercely. Everyone knew perfectly well that this was their chance to prove themselves. As long as they made full use of this opportunity, they stood to gain a whole lot from Finn Taylor. Naturally, nobody wanted to miss out on that. Ellipsis. At the same time, Yvette Larson returned home. A group had gathered at the foot of Pacific Heights. Of course, Frida Cameron was at the head of the group. Does that piece of trash live here? I thought he was living in a pigpen, but it seems like he's enjoying his life here. Enjoying his life? Wendy Jensen didn't even know how to respond to that. Finn Taylor married into the Larson family, became a joke to the whole of San Francisco, and had even been bullied and humiliated by the Taylor family for the past 3 years. But now, Frida Cameron is saying that he was enjoying his life here. Is this what a good life is in her eyes? With Frida Cameron leading the way, the few dozen men headed up the hill. Of course, the security officers rushed up as soon as they saw a group of strangers heading into the Pacific Heights neighborhood. Scram! Frida Cameron shouted tyrannically. This naturally infuriated the security officers. They were about to fight back when someone in black behind Frida Cameron took something out of his pocket. One of the older security officers quickly stepped out of the way respectfully. While the other security officers were still trying to block the group's path, they quickly stepped aside after being chided by the older security officer. Frida Cameron stomped off arrogantly toward the top of the hill. The senior security officer couldn't help but feel astounded as he watched the group disappear into the distance. People from Peregrine Hall are here. Why would they be here? The Taylor family of Peregrine Hall. Finn Taylor, the owner of No. 1 Pacific Heights. Could it be? The senior security officer felt as though he had discovered a secret and quickly headed for the Gold family's residence. The Gold family had already extended their reach to San Francisco a long time ago, but they had simply inserted some trivial characters there to keep it from others. In fact, this old security officer was from the Gold family. I have to tell Third Master Gold all about this huge secret. Frida Cameron made her way into No. 1 Pacific Heights with her men. While this was nowhere near as grand or luxurious as the Taylor family's residence in Chicago, Frida Cameron was still taken aback. She had always thought that the piece of trash would be staying in a dilapidated and rundown place. She had never expected him to be living in a villa. As the old lady walked into No. 1 Pacific Heights, Yvette Larson was puzzled. Who are you? Frida Cameron simply sat down as though she owned the house, and she took in her surroundings. Finally, her gaze fell on Yvette Larson. You must be Yvette Larson, that piece of trash's wife. Yvette Larson felt her heart leap in her chest. For some reason, this old lady in front of her evoked a sense of fear in her. The aura she exuded was something Yvette Larson had never felt in her life. Not from her grandpa Joseph Larsonet from the Sanders family, and not from even the Gold family. They had never given her such a strong sense of oppression as this old lady did. If you're talking about Finn Taylor, then you're right. I'm his wife, but I hope that you can respect him. He's not a piece of trash. Frida Cameron's gaze chilled. Other than him, you're the only one who dares to rebuke me. You guys make a good couple. Beat her up. A bodyguard dressed in black rushed up to Yvette Larson and landed a slap on her face without hesitation. Crimson red blood flowed down from the corners of her lips. The resounding slap attracted the attention of the house's other 3 occupants. They were stunned by the sight before them. Linda James was terribly protective of her daughter. Who are you? What right do you have to hit my daughter? Frida Cameron's gaze shot over. You must be the mother-in-law of that piece of trash. I heard that you always make things difficult for him. Not badly admire you. Linda James was still in a daze about what was going on, but from what she was hearing, it seemed like this old lady had a grudge against Finn Taylor. In fact, she even thought that the old lady was going to reward her for bullying her son-in-law. Unfortunately, Linda James had forgotten all about how the men in front of her had just slapped her daughter. How could she expect anything from them? Slap her. No sooner had Frida Cameron finished her sentence than Linda James got slapped. Linda James was dumbfounded. Weren't they going to reward me? Why did I end up getting slapped? She flared up instantly. How dare you guys hit me? That man in black grabbed hold of Linda James and roared, the old madam rewarded you. Aren't you going to thank her? Linda James's face was filled with fury. They hit me, yet they expect me to be grateful for that. How could there be such unreasonable people in this world? Slap. Yet another resounding slap landed on Linda James's cheek. This time, she felt as though her ears were ringing, and her whole body was trembling in discomfort. Aren't you going to thank her? Linda James naturally had no other choice since she was a weakling. She quickly uttered, "Thank you, madam, for rewarding me." The old lady was delighted. This is indeed that piece of trash's family. They're no different from him, they're pieces of trash too. Maximus Bruegel said that I made a wrong call, but who am I? I'm Frida Cameron. Does he really think that I'd make a wrong judgment? Kneel down. Frida Cameron glared at Yvette Larson condescendingly as though she was giving an imperial edict. But Yvette Larson was not her mother. She was sure she had done nothing wrong, so she wasn't going to kneel just like that. She didn't know who this old lady in front of her was, nor did she know about her grudge with her husband. However, she chose to trust him. Seeing Yvette Larson's indifference, the old lady couldn't help furrowing her brows. Two men in black then walked up to Yvette Larson and forcefully made her kneel by pressing her onto the ground. I thought that your bones were too stiff. It seems like you can kneel down too. But Yvette Larson was unfazed by Frida Cameron's mockery. I kneel to my parents and also to the dead. I respect the dead very much, so why don't I kneel and kowtow to you too? Frida Cameron flared up at Yvette Larson's words. The latter cursed me. How dare she curse me? Beat her up. The old lady slammed her cane against the ground furiously. The men in black rushed up and landed a few ferocious punches on Yvette Larson's stomach. She lay on the ground limply, groaning in pain. Frida Cameron was elated upon seeing Yvette Larson so lifeless. Her happiness was built on the latter's pain. Get that piece of trash here. I want him to see that his so-called power is nothing but a joke when compared to mine. I want him to know that he's nothing without the Taylor family. He won't be able to protect anyone without our family. Frida Cameron had gotten a little bored. She wanted to humiliate this family in front of Finn Taylor. It felt a little unexciting because she couldn't witness the pain on Finn Taylor's face. Along the way home, Finn had suddenly gone off to attend to some matters. From his expression, it looked like an important matter. Yvette Larson didn't want to bother him. I'm not going to make a call to Finn, definitely not. I'd rather be beaten up by this old lady than make that call. Frida Cameron was fuming. Nobody has ever dared to go against me, but today, that piece of trash's wife has gone against me more than once. I'm going to make this woman die a pitiful death. Beat her up, Frida Cameron ordered once again. However, Wendy Jensen suddenly spoke up. Stop. Frida Cameron glared at her daughter-in-law. What, do you want to go against me too? Mom, have you ever thought about something? He's back in San Francisco, but why isn't he at home? Frida Cameron was no fool. In fact, she was quite sharp and astute. Otherwise, she never would have been able to helm the entire Taylor family after her husband's death. Donovan must have gone to look for Donovan. Mom, if I'm not wrong, he probably has Donovan right now. If you kill his wife, Donovan will be in danger. The old lady naturally didn't dare to fool around when it came to the safety of her precious grandson. Thus, she turned her gaze to Linda James. Beat her up then. That woman always bullies that piece of trash, so he probably won't kill my grandson just for her sake. Linda James was spineless. The minute she heard that they were going to beat her up, she immediately exclaimed, "Are you guys looking for Finn Taylor? I'll call him for you. Don't hit me." In an instant, both Frida Cameron and Wendy Jensen were stunned. Neither of them had ever seen such a weak-kneed person in their life. Linda James picked up her phone and immediately made a call to her son-in-law. You idiot, where are you? Who did you offend? Do you know I'm going to get beaten to death? You'd better hurry back. Feeling the rage on the other end of the call, Finn Taylor's eyes were filled with fire too. He could already guess who was paying his family a visit. Frida Cameron, that stupid bitch, came all the way to San Francisco for her precious grandson. Number 1 Pacific Heights. Linda James put down her phone and let out a saccharine smile. I called him. He said that he'd be back right away. Frida Cameron was pleased as she glanced at Linda James's expression. It was as though she was a victor looking down on her opponent. Look at her. She's that useless piece of trash's mother-in-law, but look at how she treats me. This whole family is a joke. Less than 10 minutes later, footsteps could be heard as a group strolled into number 1 Pacific Heights. Upon seeing his grandma, Donovan Taylor rushed up into her arms emotionally. The sight of the injuries on Donovan Taylor's face broke Frida Cameron's heart, and she smacked her cane against the ground. How dare you hit my precious son? Donovan Taylor pointed at Hunter Sullivan, who was behind Finn Taylor. Grandma, that dog beat me up too. Frida Cameron's face darkened as she commanded Hunter Sullivan, kneel down. The latter's heart was in a frenzy when he spotted the former. After all, he was part of Peregrine Hall. He knew very well what this old lady was capable of, but what was done was done. Between the two brothers of the Taylor family, he had already chosen to stand with Finn Taylor. This meant that there was no longer any need to listen to that old lady. I will only listen to Elder Young Master's commands. Frida Cameron raised her eyebrow. Elder Young Master? Our Taylor family has never had an Elder Young Master. We only have a precious grandson, as well as a jinx who's here to destroy our whole family. The moment Donovan Taylor and Finn Taylor rushed in, Frances Larson, his wife, and Diane Taylor were all dumbfounded. They had never expected two Finn Taylors. But now that Frida Cameron had said those words, they completely understood the situation. The one who had shown up a couple of days earlier wasn't Finn Taylor but his identical twin brother. Finn Taylor sneered inwardly. Precious grandson, jinx, great. He walked up to his wife, and his heart ached when he saw the injuries on her. That old bitch hit Yvette. I'll make her pay for this. My precious grandson, it's grandma's fault for not protecting you well. What are you guys waiting for? Hurry and beat them up. Kill them. By this point in time, Frida Cameron had already lost all rationality. She no longer cared about the blood ties between her and Finn Taylor. She wanted him dead. She wanted Hunter Sullivan dead. She wanted everyone here dead. With Frida Cameron's command, dozens of men in black swarmed up. Finn Taylor hated their guts. These are the people who beat my wife up. I'm not going to let my grandmother off, nor am I going to let these people off. Whoosh! Before 3 minutes were up, the entire room fell into pin-drop silence. The few dozen men in black were now lying on the ground, their limbs broken and their internal organs damaged. It would take 3 days at the longest for them to die from organ failure. Frida Cameron's face was filled with inexplicable shock. That's impossible. To deal with Finn Taylor, I brought along the strongest fighters from the Shadow Troopers. But even then, they were no match for him. How is that even possible? Previously, Finn Taylor had killed a Shadow Trooper back at the Taylor family's residence. However, Frida Cameron had always thought that it was Maximus Bruegel who had done so. She refused to believe that her grandson was capable of this. But today, she couldn't deny it any longer. It's your turn now. As Finn Taylor said that, he strolled toward his grandmother. The latter's heart clenched up in fear. What are you trying to do? I'm your grandma, your biological grandma. Aren't you afraid of being cursed out and ruining your reputation? Finn Taylor chuckled, and it only intensified the fear in Frida Cameron's heart. I'm naturally not going to kill you. I'm not going to let everyone curse at me, but I'm sure that someone will be willing to do it. Finn Taylor grabbed hold of his twin brother. The latter was trembling in fear, and he grasped at his grandma's elbow like a little child. Of course, his strength paled in comparison to his twin brother's. With a gentle fling, Finn Taylor threw his brother against the wall. The former then grabbed the peregrine cane quickly. He couldn't help but sneer as he gazed at it. I've already lost count of how many times this cane has struck me since I was a child. Even when I started eating before my brother, I would always get scolded. And this is all because of what that old monk had said. I'm a jinx, while my brother is a saint. Finn Taylor picked up the cane and whacked his brother with it. The latter's face immediately swelled up as blood and flesh got mixed together. Do you want to live? Donovan Taylor was initially still arrogant, but after being hit, he fell onto the ground and begged for mercy. Finno, brother, my dear brother, please let me off. I don't want to die. I really don't want to die. Finn Taylor pointed at his grandma and asked, do you see her? Yes, both of you have bullied me, but I'm going to be magnanimous today on account of our blood ties. I'll only kill one of you, so why don't you tell me? Should I kill her or you? Shock. The moment Finn Taylor finished his sentence, the entire room fell into silence. Nobody had expected Finn Taylor to make such a proposition. Of course, nobody in the room was more afraid than Linda James. She had bullied Finn Taylor for 3 whole years, thinking that he was nothing but a piece of trash. Who would have expected Finn Taylor to appear in front of her in this manner today? It turned out that he was no piece of trash. Once he made up his mind about things, he was so vicious that he could even kill his own grandma, let alone her. Linda James felt a chill run down her spine. Finn Taylor, what do you mean? Frida Cameron exploded. How dare this piece of trash say such disrespectful things? Thud. The cane landed on Donovan Taylor yet again, and fresh blood flowed down onto the ground. Thud. As Donovan Taylor took another hit, he was on the verge of death. Frida Cameron's heart broke as she witnessed her precious grandson being beaten. Stop. Don't hit my precious grandson, you bast. Just you wait and see. I'll get someone to kill you once we get out of here. Finn Taylor sneered. I already said that one of you has to die today. If you leave, I'll kill him. Thud, he landed another blow on his twin brother's ear, slicing it off. Donovan Taylor groaned in extreme pain as he rolled around on the ground, begging for mercy. Seeing her precious grandson being beaten up, Frida Cameron had the urge to fight it out with Finn Taylor. Yet, at that very moment, Donovan Taylor glared at his grandmother with bloodshot eyes. You stupid bitch, you keep saying that I'm your precious grandson. Didn't you hear him? Only one of us will survive. Why don't you go and die? Hurry up and die, you stupid old bitch. As Donovan Taylor finished his sentence, the entire number 1 Pacific Heights fell into dead silence. Frida Cameron wondered if her ears were playing tricks on her. The precious grandson who she had protected with her dear life was now asking her to die. Ridiculous. How ridiculous. This was the greatest irony. Frida Cameron felt suffocated. I don't want to remain here any longer. I came all the way to San Francisco from Chicago for my grandson, but what I got in return was him asking me to die. What's the point in staying here any longer? I'm leaving. Are you going to stop me? Frida Cameron stood up and headed toward the door. Everyone's eyes shot toward Finn Taylor. They were curious to know if he would stop her. Unexpectedly, he didn't. He was going to let Frida Cameron leave just like that. Hunter Sullivan was the most confused. He understood more than anyone else just how powerful and terrifying this old lady could be. If she managed to return to Chicago after all that had happened today, Finn Taylor wouldn't just be facing Frida Cameron alone. All the prominent figures of Chicago, Russell Ferguson, Elijah Crawford, Andrew Hamilton, and Edward Mackenzie would show up as well. They would naturally choose to oppose Finn Taylor without a moment of hesitation. However, it would be easy to prevent that situation from happening. All he needed to do was kill that old lady right then and there. Yet, Finn Taylor didn't. In fact, he would never do that. He had already said that Frida Cameron was his biological grandmother. Although they were at loggerheads, they were still bound by blood ties. If Finn Taylor were to kill his grandmother personally, he would definitely be lambasted for the rest of his life. Finn Taylor glanced at his brother and said coolly, 5 steps, 4 steps, 3 steps. Initially, Donovan Taylor was still confused about what his brother meant. However, it suddenly dawned on him. The latter was counting the number of steps left until the old lady left the room. He had already said that only one of them would walk out alive today. If Frida Cameron walked out, he would have to die. Donovan Taylor's eyes reddened. I'm not going to let that happen. Gritting his teeth and enduring the pain radiating throughout his body, he rushed forward and kicked his grandma viciously. Her head hit the ground as she fell back. Frida Cameron was already advanced in age, and such a blow had stripped her of the ability to speak. Her breaths were getting shallower as her pupils were glued to Donovan Taylor. Ridiculous. How ridiculous. I've protected my precious grandson throughout my life, yet he's turning around to kill me. It seems like Maximus Bruegel was right. The true saint of the Taylor family is Finn Taylor, not Donovan Taylor. Perhaps, I had indeed fallen into a trap. Someone had indeed bribed that monk and was trying to ruin the Taylor family and Peregrine Hall over the span of a few decades. Brother, that old lady is dead. Please let me off. Donovan Taylor's actions and words stunned everyone present so much that they were all at a loss for words. It was as though they were looking at the devil. Finn Taylor laughed. Frida Cameron is dead. The old lady who had always called me a jinx and wanted me dead is finally dead. Finn Taylor strolled up to his grandmother. He then kneeled down and placed his finger at the latter's nose. Only when he felt that she was no longer breathing did he feel at ease. Ah! Finn Taylor's expression was filled with despair as he punched Frida Cameron's chest viciously. Grandma, you can't die. I miss you. I'm going to do CPR for you. Thud, he landed yet another blow on Frida Cameron's chest. Hunter Sullivan couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. He knew that the elder young master was putting on an act, but that was right. Frida Cameron is the head of the Taylor family, as well as Peregrine Hall. Her death will definitely cause a stir. Elder young master can't afford to take the blame for this. My condolences, young master. Madam has already passed on. Hunter Sullivan kneeled on the ground beside Finn Taylor. The latter appeared to be heartbroken as he cried out pitifully, yet his fists pounded on Frida Cameron's chest. Grandma, my dear grandma. You can't abandon me and just leave me here alone. My condolences, elder young master. Hunter Sullivan crouched on the ground. Grandma, it was my fault for going against you and angering you. I'll definitely organize a grand funeral for you to send you off in glory. Finn Taylor turned to his younger brother with a painful expression. Send that unfilial son of the Taylor family Donovan Taylor to the dark pool. Lock him there forever for killing Grandma. Snap. Two of Finn Taylor's subordinates quickly subdued Donovan Taylor. The former turned his gaze toward Wendy Jensen. Mother, father passed away from an illness, Grandma is gone, and my little brother is unfilial. I will do my best to bring the Taylor family back to glory. Wendy Jensen stood there, stunned. Only one word came up: abdication. Finn Taylor said that he's going to lead the family to glory. This clearly means that he wants me to hand over all power and authority. Wendy Jensen sighed inwardly. Although I hadn't done much, I had contributed to the psychological trauma this child has faced. He isn't going to kill her, but neither is he going to leave me with any power. This is something all new emperors will do when they force the incumbent to abdicate. Wendy Jensen stretched out her arm, a piece of jade in her hand. There was a word carved into the piece of jade: Taylor. This was a symbol of the Taylor family head, and Wendy Jensen handed it over to her son. As he received it, he said, Donovan killed Grandma, so you must be shocked. Please remain in the Taylor family's residence from now on. Restricting my movements. Not only is he forcing me out of power, but he is even putting me under house arrest. Finn Taylor was surprising her over and over again. It wasn't just Frida Cameron who had judged the twins wrongly. Wendy Jensen realized that even she had judged her son wrongly. She simply felt that Finn Taylor was no piece of trash, yet she had never expected that he was such a high flyer. I've gotten a little tired these days. I'll stay in the Taylor family's residence and not head out from now on. Very quickly, Frida Cameron was brought back to Chicago by the Taylor family. The funeral was exceptionally extravagant, and there, Wendy Jensen also made an announcement: the title of Master Peregrine was stripped away from Donovan Taylor. Her elder son Timothy Taylor would take over the helm of Peregrine Hall. Not many people in Chicago knew about the elder son of the Taylor family. As such, this announcement made waves in the city. At the Gold family's residence in San Francisco, when Third Master Gold learned of Finn Taylor's real identity, the shock on his face couldn't be concealed. The Taylor family. Third Master Gold hated that family's ostentatious Donovan Taylor, so he never put any effort into getting to know him. In fact, he didn't even know what Donovan Taylor looked like. Otherwise, he never would have treated Finn Taylor that way when they first met. Kimberly, arrange a meeting with Finn Taylor for me. Chicago. A storm was brewing in the city. Following the death of Jacob Taylor and Frida Cameron, it seemed like the Taylor family was on the brink of collapsing. Donovan Taylor had already been imprisoned in the dark pool. Did that mean that a woman Wendy Jensen was going to helm the great Taylor family? In fact, nobody even paid attention to Timothy Taylor, who seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. Everyone knew full well that Timothy Taylor was the jinx of the Taylor family and had been despised by the family since he was a child. Thus, there was no way someone like that could take over the family's reins. All of Chicago's prominent figures, Russell Ferguson, Elijah Crawford, Andrew Hamilton, and Edward Mackenzie, had already set their sights on having a piece of the Taylor family's pie. But just as they were getting ready to bring the Taylor family down, something happened. Overnight, Jacob Taylor's cousins Jefferson Taylor and Julian Taylor entered the Taylor family to snatch power over the family from Wendy Jensen. As Wendy Jensen returned from her daze and tried to fight back, someone walked in: Benjamin Taylor. He was the old master of the Taylor family and Jacob Taylor's second uncle. Benjamin Taylor was a centenarian and now held the highest position in the Taylor family. Naturally, nobody in the family dared to go against him. Just like that, the Taylor family's power was clearly consolidated. It now seemed possible for the crumbling Taylor family to rebuild themselves again. This meant that all of those people had made preparations in vain. Russell Ferguson, Elijah Crawford, Andrew Hamilton, and Edward Mackenzie all turned up at the Taylor family's residence with lavish gifts to greet Benjamin Taylor. Maximus Bruegel silently took in the sight from afar, shaking his head as he stroked his beard. It seems like it won't be that easy for Finn to take over as the Taylor family head. At that time, Finn Taylor's grandfather Brian Taylor had chased his younger brother, Benjamin Taylor, out of Chicago after taking over the family's helm. Who would have expected Brian Taylor's descendants to land up in such a state? That was why Benjamin Taylor saw his chance. As such, he took his sons Jefferson Taylor and Julian Taylor back. Right now, he had the highest position in the entire family. Of course, Finn Taylor meant nothing to him. All that was going on in Chicago quickly reached Finn Taylor's ears, but he simply gave a chuckle without saying anything. The Taylor family could do whatever they wanted to. If Finn Taylor really cared about the Taylor family, he would simply build up a strong and powerful Taylor family himself. It was only on account of blood ties that he was allowing the Taylor family to survive and not fall. Hunter Sullivan was slightly shaken as he glanced at Finn Taylor's expression. A week had passed since that incident, yet Hunter Sullivan was still unable to calm himself down. He had always thought that he knew just how vicious his boss was, but never in his life would he have expected the latter to be far more vicious than he had ever imagined. Just then, Finn Taylor received a call. It was from Clarine Landon. "Finn Taylor, hurry on over. I'm being humiliated here." He was stunned. "What's going on? Stop asking me so many questions. I'll give you the address, we'll talk when you're here." Finn Taylor then received an address, and he was dumbfounded. What's going on with Clarine Landon? She's Yvette's best friend. I don't think it would be good for me to ignore her. As such, he set off for that address. Ellipsis. "Babe, tell me, did you rush into the male washroom to peep on me?" A short and chubby man had his eyes fixed on Clarine Landon as he shamelessly spat out those words. Earlier on, Clarine Landon had bumped into a little kid in the mall. She had taken him around in hopes of finding his parents, but he suddenly needed to use the washroom. Clarine Landon glanced at the kid helplessly and could only suggest bringing him to the female washroom. Unfortunately, that kid vehemently refused to enter it. Left with no other choice, she could only bring the kid into the male washroom after ensuring that there was nobody else in there. Just then, that plump man entered the washroom. Seeing how beautiful Clarine Landon was, the man couldn't hold his thoughts in. Of course, Clarine Landon wasn't one to tolerate such nonsense and simply rebuked him. That was how the situation escalated, and now, there were almost 100 bystanders around them. That man was utterly shameless and refused to let the matter go, spouting all sorts of nasty words. Clarine Landon felt downright humiliated as countless pairs of eyes were glued to her. There were even some who were taking photos to send to their friends. She had tried to explain herself, but it was to no avail. Everyone was simply standing by the sidelines, treating it as a free show. Clarine Landon's eyes were brimming with tears, and she was on the verge of tears. However, she knew that it would be useless to cry. At that very moment, the mall manager Tom Hadley arrived. When Clarine Landon saw this, hope surged in her heart because Tom Hadley was her classmate. She narrated what had happened to the latter without missing out any details, but to her surprise, Tom Hadley ignored her completely. In fact, he shoved her straight to the ground. "Are you done? No matter what or how much you say, you're still a woman who barged into the men's restroom." Clarine Landon glared at Tom Hadley as she lay on the ground. She couldn't help but feel that the other felt terribly unfamiliar. They were classmates, so why did Tom Hadley refuse to believe her? It then suddenly struck her that Tom Hadley seemed to have tried to woo her while they were still in school, but she had rejected him. They had been college students at that time, and dating was the last thing on her mind. "Do you mean that Tom Hadley still holds a grudge against me because of that?" Seeing the dejected Clarine Landon on the ground, Tom Hadley's heart leapt with joy. "Clarine, oh Clarine, weren't you so haughty and arrogant at that time? You're just from a second-tier family, so how dare you look down on me? Look, you're still at my mercy now. I'm going to blow this matter up. I'm going to let the whole of San Francisco know how much of a pervert Clarine Landon is." Emotion surged in his heart as he saw hope in taking revenge. A sinister sneer appeared on his face as though he was cooking up a new ploy. Suddenly, the door was pushed open from the outside. Finn Taylor squeezed his way through the crowd. Upon seeing Clarine Landon on the ground and in tears, he knew that something was wrong. "What's the matter?" The aggrieved Clarine Landon burst into tears and hugged Finn Taylor the moment she spotted him. The latter was bewildered. "What am I supposed to do? It doesn't seem right to let her hug me so openly, yet it doesn't seem right to push her away either. That would only add to her misery." Thankfully, Clarine Landon knew her place. She let him go and wiped away her tears before telling Finn Taylor everything that had happened. When she finished, the latter nodded. "Don't worry, leave it to me. It's no big deal." Finn Taylor glanced at Tom Hadley before saying, "You're Tom Hadley, right? Are you the manager here? The mall should have CCTVs around, so we'll know if she's telling the truth once we check them." Tom Hadley's lips curled up menacingly. "You piece of trash, did you think I wouldn't recognize you? You're just the useless matrilocal son-in-law of the Larson family. Hey, Clarine Landon is your wife's best friend, isn't she? Are you cheating on your wife with her?" His words were downright shameless and accusatory. Initially, this hadn't been a big deal. After all, two guests had simply gotten into a small quarrel. As the mall manager, Tom Hadley could have simply cleared Clarine Landon's name by checking the surveillance footage. Then, everything would be easy to resolve. Yet, He was trying to take his personal revenge using his status and was even dragging Yvette Larson into the matter. Finn Taylor naturally wasn't going to let him off just like that. Gregory Mall, this mall should belong to Gregory Jensen, right? Finn Taylor picked up his phone and talked to the other. Tom Hadley, I'll get your boss here to resolve the matter for me since you can't resolve it. Tom Hadley nearly burst into laughter as he caught sight of the other's expression. He was sure that Finn Taylor was simply putting on an act. Who in San Francisco doesn't know who Finn Taylor is? He's just a matrilocal son-in-law of the Larson family. He has endured humiliation at the family's hands for 3 whole years and has never fought back nor rebuked them. Yet, he's acting as though he's a big shot here. You know Gregory Jensen. If you know him, I even know Master Peregrine of Peregrine Hall. Wow, Clarine, you're really funny. Of all people, you asked him for help. Aren't you clear about who he is? Do you really think that he'd know our boss Gregory Jensen? As Tom Hadley spat those words out, Clarine Landon felt a little uneasy. She knew that her best friend's husband was slightly unordinary and was capable, but she didn't know if he knew Gregory Jensen. When the bystanders learned of Finn Taylor's true identity, they couldn't help but chortle. Yes, he's just a matrilocal son-in-law of the Larson family. If he's really that capable, he wouldn't have been bullied by the Larson family for 3 whole years. The Jensen family was by no means smaller than the Larson family. Just then, someone rushed into the mall in a frenzy. The security officers cleared a path through the crowd for that man to walk up to Finn Taylor. Of course, this person was none other than Gregory Jensen. Mr. Taylor, why didn't you let me know that you were gracing us with your presence? I sincerely apologize. Gregory Jensen had just been fooling around with his friends and some barmaids. It was then that Hunter Sullivan had made a call to him. The former informed him that they had provoked someone they never should have trifled with. He even said that the Jensen family would go bankrupt if they didn't handle this matter well. Just as Gregory Jensen's heart leapt and he thought that something was amiss, Logan Yates, Alexander Scott, and Zachary Kennedy all made calls to him as well. Fuck, within a minute, I've offended prominent figures of New York, Chicago, Seattle, and Washington. His heart pounded against his chest. Not daring to delay even by a minute, he rushed over. He knew that he was in deep trouble. The survival of his family hinged on this critical moment. Why are you here, Mr. Jensen? The moment Tom Hadley spotted Gregory Jensen, he felt his heart leap out of his chest. Does Finn Taylor really know Gregory Jensen? But that doesn't seem right. It must be a coincidence. As such, he tried to suck up to his boss. Yes, Tom, you're here too. What happened? The moment Gregory Jensen arrived, he had spotted this huge crowd around. He knew that Hunter Sullivan had to be talking about this, but he didn't know what had actually gone on. It isn't a big deal, Mr. Jensen. This lady barged into the male washroom, making this gentleman feel very uncomfortable. They tried to reason it out with each other, but this lady refused to apologize to him. Gregory Jensen eyed that plump man. Could Hunter Sullivan be talking about this man? Why couldn't you handle such a trivial matter well? Gregory Jensen pretended to be angry as he lectured his subordinate. He then walked up to that plump man. Hello, sir. I'm so sorry. We're at fault for not managing our mall well, so please forgive us. Before this, even that plump man had thought that Gregory Jensen was only here because of Finn Taylor. After all, it was too much of a coincidence that he had suddenly turned up. But the moment he heard Gregory Jensen's words, he came to a sudden understanding it was purely a coincidence that Gregory Jensen was here. He had nothing to do with Finn Taylor. The plump man nodded. I can do that, but you have to pay for whatever I buy today. Gregory Jensen naturally accepted that proposition, although he murmured inwardly. Someone who can make Hunter Sullivan and the other 3 call me has to have quite a prominent background. Yet, he's making such a low-level request. However, Gregory Jensen definitely wasn't going to refuse the plump man now that he had already asked for it. Finn Taylor, didn't you say you knew Mr. Jensen? Look, you're being humiliated now. Hearing Tom Hadley's words, the crowd couldn't help but burst out into laughter. Just moments earlier, Finn Taylor had been putting on an act as though he was a big shot, even saying that he could call Gregory Jensen over. But as it turned out, the latter didn't even know him and had even asked him to apologize to that plump man. Wasn't that embarrassing? In Gregory Jensen's heart, that plump man wasn't one to be trifled with. Since Finn Taylor and that woman had fought with this plump man, they were his enemies. Ma'am, what were you trying to do by barging into the men's washroom? I'll make sure that I announce whatever you've done so that everyone sees it. I'll also make sure that all malls ban people like you from entering. Gregory Jensen then pointed at Finn Taylor. And you, sir, It's good to stand up for your friend, but you should persuade your friend to change her ways when she's done something wrong. We don't welcome people like you in our mall. Please scram. Gregory Jensen's words were full of spite. He had even asked them to scram. He had pinned the pair as criminals. Just then, 4 Rolls-Royce Phantoms rolled to a stop in front of the mall. 4 figures who commanded presence got out of the cars. The security officers were so shell-shocked that they didn't dare to stop any of them. Even the crowd cleared a path for them. The 4 figures walked up to Finn Taylor and bowed respectfully, greeting, "Elder young master." Of course, the ones who had gotten out of the 4 Rolls-Royce Phantoms were none other than Logan Yates, Hunter Sullivan, Alexander Scott, and Zachary Kennedy. The 4 of them had just witnessed how vicious Finn Taylor could get a few days earlier. Naturally, not a single one of them dared to remain at home once they heard that their master had been angered. They had all hurried here in fear. No matter what had happened and whether it had anything to do with them, the first thing they had to do was apologize to Finn Taylor. And their apology left Gregory Jensen dumbfounded. Earlier, he had been sure that the one they had been talking about was the plump man. But he was wrong. The one he couldn't afford to offend was Finn Taylor. Things were getting awkward now. Finn Taylor scoffed. "How early? I'm about to get chased out, and he has already asked me to scram. That isn't right. We clearly told Gregory Jensen to treat him well, so how dare he offend Finn Taylor?" Gregory Jensen was on the brink of tears. Sirs, this is just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding." Gregory Jensen forced a smile out as he tried to defend himself. However, the 4 guardians refused to hear him out. They picked up their phones, and each said something into their phones. Then, more than 100 people arrived at Gregory Mall. Of course, they packed the mall to full capacity. Gregory Jensen's face fell as he watched the scene play out, but he was a vicious man. He wasn't going to give up just like that, so he fell on his knees before Finn Taylor. "I was wrong, sir. I'm begging you to please let me off. I was wrong. I was blind not to have recognized you. Please let me live." Finn Taylor allowed Gregory Jensen to go on for more than half an hour before he finally spoke up. "It wasn't a big deal to begin with since it was only a misunderstanding, but your manager Tom Hadley had a grudge against this lady and was trying to take his revenge. Thus, he pushed all the blame to her. I asked him to get the surveillance footage so we could see what had happened, but he refused. That was why I had no choice but to get the 4 of them to get you here so that you could settle the matter. However, I never expected you to let me down too." Finn Taylor sighed. This sigh made Hunter Sullivan step up, and he landed a resounding slap on Gregory Jensen's face. Hunter Sullivan's prowess was undeniable. That was how he had become a guardian of Peregrine Hall. With just a single slap, Gregory Jensen's face had swelled up. Of course, the latter didn't dare to utter so much as a word. He could only receive his punishment in silence, but he was naturally worlds apart from Finn Taylor. The latter didn't even bother about him and simply took Clarine Landon and left. While that was the case, this matter hadn't yet been resolved. There was no way the 4 guardians were going to let Gregory Jensen off so easily, but they eventually spared his life after the latter had begged for his life fervently. "Tom Hadley, you bast. You ruined my life, so you'd better scram. You're fired, and you're not going to find another job in your life. If you ever do, I'll hang myself." Tom Hadley panicked as soon as he heard that. He fell on his knees and kowtowed as he begged for mercy. Unfortunately, none of that was of any use. His situation was different from Gregory Jensen. The latter had only misidentified Finn Taylor, while the former had purposely put him in a difficult spot. There was no way Gregory Jensen would forgive someone as stupid as him. In the end, everyone's gaze fell on that plump man. He was the cause of the whole incident. If not for him, they never would have offended Finn Taylor, much less caused such a ruckus. Hunter Sullivan waved his hand, and more than 100 men in black turned up to drag that plump man away. Of course, nobody in the crowd had any sympathy for the latter. Without even needing anyone to remind them, they obediently deleted the recordings from their phones. This naturally included the videos they had sent to their friends. If even Gregory Jensen couldn't afford to offend them, who were they to offend them? Ellipsis. Finn Taylor walked out of the mall with Clarine Landon. The latter quickly thanked him awkwardly. "Thanks." Finn Taylor smiled coolly. "Let's go to the hospital to visit Yvette." Previously, Frida Cameron had gotten someone to beat Yvette Larson up. Although the latter had only suffered superficial injuries, her husband had insisted on her being warded and observed, and she was still in the hospital to this day. "I'm going to get some fruit. I haven't been there in 2 days." The pair then bought some fruit before heading to St. Cloud Hospital. And it was there that Finn Taylor bumped into two people, Quince Larson and Eleanor Larson. They, too, had fruit in their hands. Finn Taylor rolled his eyes. There's no way these two people are here to visit Yvette. They're here to make a mockery of her. Oh, it's good to see you here, Finn Taylor. Come on, lead the way. I heard that Yvette was hospitalized, so I'm here to visit her as the family head. Family head. Finn Taylor rolled his eyes yet again. How shameless could Quince Larson get to use that title for himself? Yet, he had no intention of paying any attention to Quince Larson. He simply walked off. As for Quince Larson, he quickly stepped behind Finn Taylor as though the latter was leading the way for him. Even such a lame and childish act satisfied him. Very quickly, they arrived at Yvette Larson's ward. When she spotted her husband with her cousins, she couldn't help but wonder what was going on. Yvette, I heard that you were hospitalized. As the family head, it's my duty to check on how you're doing. Yvette Larson rolled her eyes at Quince Larson's concern too. She was rendered speechless by his behavior too. Yvette, why don't you tell us what happened? Did someone bully you? Why don't you tell the family head what happened? Ever since he had earned the title of temporary family head, Quince Larson had started regarding himself as an important figure. However, everyone knew that he was useless and knew nothing in reality. Yet, he still thought highly of himself and was even trying to dip his hands in everything. In fact, he could never go 3 sentences without mentioning the words, family head, as though he was afraid others wouldn't know of his title. Eleanor Larson's heart felt at ease as she glanced at the injuries on her cousin's face. How I wish that Yvette had been disfigured instead. Yvette Larson, don't tell me that you're having an affair. Who could have beaten you up like this? No sooner had Eleanor Larson said those words than Finn Taylor glared at her with a piercing gaze. After her grandpa's accident, Eleanor Larson had actually grown a little frightened of the latter. She had this gnawing feeling that the latter could kill her at any time. As such, she subconsciously retreated when Finn Taylor set his gaze on her. Finn Taylor, what are you trying to do? Eleanor was just joking. Quince Larson put on a fierce front, wanting to scare Finn Taylor. Unfortunately, the latter paid him no heed. He stomped up to Eleanor Larson and demanded, apologize. Eleanor Larson was terrified, but she was never going to bow down and apologize to her cousin, much less because of Finn Taylor. If I am to apologize today, it would simply show that I'm afraid of this useless piece of trash Finn Taylor and that I'm admitting defeat to my cousin. Finn Taylor, who are you? Why should I listen to you? Besides, I might very well be right. Look at how badly your wife was beaten up. Do you think she'd have been beaten up if she didn't do anything wrong? Eleanor Larson thought she was being logical and rational, yet what she got in return was a fist from Finn Taylor that struck her straight in the nose. Fresh blood oozed out. She wiped away the blood from her nose, and she railed at him. What's wrong with you? You're going to die for punching me. Finn Taylor sneered. Didn't you say so earlier? Proper women won't get beaten. I don't think you're very proper, so I punched you. PFF'd. Yvette Larson and her best friend were tickled by his words. Eleanor Larson had wanted to humiliate her cousin, but she had never expected to fail in doing so and even be beaten up instead. She had shot herself in the foot. Humph. Not wanting to stay any longer, Eleanor Larson huffed and stomped out. Just as she reached the door, she suddenly spoke up again. Oh right, I forgot to tell you guys something. Do you remember the prizes that you guys won when our family went on our outing together? The family has made the decision to use that for Grandpa. Since Grandpa is in this state now and can't use the money, we'll be having a family meeting to decide what to do with that money. Yvette Larson, I hope that you'll recover by then. Otherwise, I can't be sure that the Larson family won't think the same way as me when they see your face. Finn Taylor narrowed his eyes. That prize money, it was compensation from the Taylor family because they couldn't find a better way of giving it to me. These were all gifts from the Taylor family to Yvette, yet the Larson family is discussing how to use that money for themselves. Although Finn Taylor didn't care for all those gifts, they were the only things the Taylor family had ever given to his wife. Thus, he was never going to let them land in someone else's hands. Finn Taylor, since Eleanor already talked about it, I'm officially letting you know that we're going to be meeting next Tuesday to discuss this matter. Remember to turn up. Yvette, you can come along if you're feeling better too. With that, Quince Larson stood up and walked out with his cousin. Finn Taylor couldn't help but sneer as he watched them leave. I knew that they couldn't have come just to visit my wife. It turns out that they had come just to inform us about this matter. Just as I had expected, they didn't bear good intentions. Finn, are my injuries very serious? Will I have to miss the meeting next Tuesday? Finn Taylor grabbed hold of his wife's hand. No, You'll definitely get to go. Of course, I'm going to let her go. Those gifts belong to her, so who would I give those gifts to if she isn't there? Besides, how am I to know what kind of lies Eleanor Larson would cook up to hurt my wife if she didn't show up? Finn Taylor headed out to get his wife a cup of milk tea. Of course, he added a little something in it. With that, Finn Taylor was sure that his spouse would definitely be able to attend the family meeting next Tuesday. Ellipsis. Initially, Yvette Larson had been worried that the injuries would leave scars on her face. However, she found that her injuries were healing at an incredible rate. In fact, her face had completely healed by Monday. It was as though nothing had even happened. Wait a minute, Yvette Larson couldn't help but marvel at her reflection in the mirror. That was fast. Logically speaking, it should take a month at the very least for my injuries to heal. However, she didn't give it much thought since it was a good thing that she had recovered. In the blink of an eye, Tuesday came. Finn Taylor drove toward the Larson family's residence with his wife. Naturally, the key to the residence now lay in Quince Larson's possession. After all, he was the temporary family head. He had arrived at the residence way ahead of time, standing by the door as he imagined how everyone from the family would have to bow respectfully to him and address him as the family head as they walked in. In another few years' time, they will even have to kneel down before me in reverence once Grandpa dies and I hold the position of family head. Are you daydreaming again? Just as Quince Larson was dreaming about all that, a sultry voice entered his consciousness. He frowned and opened his eyes, only to see Hilary Stone. Hilary Stone, believe it or not, but I have the power to chase you out of the Larson family now. Of course, Hilary Stone wasn't at all afraid of that threat. She merely chuckled. Why don't you go ahead and try it then? But Quince Larson was just saying so. He'd never have the guts to actually go through with it. This woman was capable of anything. She had even gotten into affairs with her own brothers-in-law, so he would just be creating more trouble for himself by chasing her out of the family. What are you guys talking about? Following that, Eleanor Larson and the other family members arrived too. With almost everyone present, it was about time for the meeting to start. Quince Larson glanced at the clock. Why isn't Finn Taylor here yet? In fact, Quince Larson had invited everyone else through phone calls. But for Finn Taylor, he had paid him a special visit. This wasn't because Quince Larson respected the latter but because he wanted to let him know that he was the family head. They'd better watch their behavior in the future because I'm the one in charge now. But what annoyed him was that Finn Taylor and Yvette Larson were late for his very first meeting as the family head. They have to be doing so on purpose. Why should we wait for them? That woman is so shameless. She probably doesn't dare to show up after getting beat up. I see that you're spouting rubbish again. Do you not care for your nose? As soon as Eleanor Larson had finished her sentence, she heard Finn Taylor's voice. Thinking about how viciously the latter had punched her the other day, Eleanor Larson quickly ran to hide in the house. Of course, that was useless. She couldn't possibly hide forever. Was she going to disappear from this earth? Nonetheless, what shocked Eleanor Larson even more was that Finn Taylor had only threatened her but hadn't done anything more. She couldn't wrap her head around it and eventually decided that it was simply because this was her grandpa's residence. Finn Taylor personally killed Grandpa, so he's probably feeling guilty and doesn't want to go any further here. Unfortunately, she knew nothing about the drama awaiting her. Since we're all here, please have a seat. It's my first time hosting a meeting as the family head, so please forgive me if I make any blunders. The moment Quince Larson opened his mouth, he made sure to emphasize his status as family head. This meant that he had the greatest authority in the entire Larson family. This meeting was different because all past meetings had been hosted by his grandpa. Even though his grandfather was biased toward him, he had had no choice but to let Yvette Larson speak up at times as well. But now that Quince Larson was the family head, he could do as he pleased. After everyone took their seats, he finally began. This is my plan. We'll split the money into 3 portions. The first will be for our family's use, I'll safekeep it for now. The second will be for me. I'm the family head after all, and I need to host our guests and entertain others. I'm not greedy, so I'll leave the last portion for you guys to split amongst yourselves. Everyone couldn't help but roll their eyes when they heard Quince Larson talk about his selfless plan. How could there be such shameless people in this world? He's taking 2/3 of the entire sum for himself, yet he dares to proclaim that he isn't greedy. Would he only be greedy if he took the entire sum for himself? Of course, everyone had something to say about Quince Larson's proposal. Hilary Stone was the first. I think we should let each family have an equal share. By the side, Eleanor Larson smiled. Why should we split it based on families? Shouldn't we split it based on the number of people we have? This belongs to the Larson family, so it's only right that anyone who's not a Larson shouldn't get anything. Hillary Stone sneered. You brat, who are you to fight with me? If I'm not a Larson, why is my name in the ancestral books then? Everyone's expression stiffened at that. Hillary Stone's name had been entered into their ancestral books twice. She had been kicked out once because of certain matters that were taboo in the family. But every time she encountered any problems, she would always bring it up shamelessly. All right, stop arguing. Quince Larson stepped forward to try to prevent a fight from breaking out. This was his first time holding a family meeting. It would definitely be recorded in the ancestral books, and he didn't wish for the Larson family's descendants to think of him as a joke. Yvette Larson, I'm sure your family wants to have a say. Why don't you guys say something? Quince Larson was sure that the key lay in Yvette Larson's family. As long as they didn't have any objections, he could suppress everyone else. Finn Taylor sneered. Quince Larson, do you really want me to say what I think? Quince Larson frowned. I asked Yvette Larson, not Finn Taylor. In fact, the latter never should have spoken up at the first family meeting I'm hosting. It's already degrading me by doing so. It'd be an absolute disgrace to me for 100 years. But Finn Taylor had already started, and Quince Larson had no choice but to let the former continue. All right, as the family head, I'm willing to accept opinions from anyone in the family. Finn Taylor continued, it's simple. Our family was the one who won all these gifts, so what do they have to do with you? I'm going to take them all with me later. What will you do about that? As expected, his words drew ire from everyone. What do you mean, Finn Taylor? You're making it sound as though everyone here is snatching what belongs to your family. He rebuked, am I wrong? Frederick Larson was rendered speechless by Finn Taylor's rebuttal. Finn Taylor, you're being ridiculous. Why don't you think about how you managed to win? It's all because we went out on an outing together. Since that's the case, the prize naturally belongs to the Larson family. Frederick Larson looked at the self-righteous Franklin Larson. Do you mean that you'd hand over the prizes if you'd won too? The latter nodded seriously. Of course. Finn Taylor nodded too. All right, we'll go to your house later and see what you've bought under the Larson family's name. You'd better hand them all over too. Franklin Larson was at a loss for words. I've taken too much from the family. Am I supposed to hand them all over? In fact, he had bought his house under the family's name. There was no way he was going to split it with the rest of the family. Finn Taylor, we're all adults. Don't be so childish. Why don't we invite the boss of that place over and ask him about it? The ticket was bought under the Larson family's name, but you were the one who won. In that case, should the prize belong to you or the Larson family? Just then, Eleanor Larson proposed an interesting solution. Let me think about it. I think the boss of that place is Alexander Scott, the head of Seattle's Scott family. I'm sure he won't be biased since we're nobody to him. What do you think about that, Finn Taylor? After giving it some thought, Quince Larson agreed to it too. He had even asked his cousin's husband a question. Quince Larson knew Alexander Scott, and he was the one who had introduced the latter to Eleanor Larson. He was confident of his victory, and so was Eleanor Larson. I've already climbed into Alexander Scott's bed. There is no way Alexander Scott would shortchange me. Yet, if the Larson family knew of Finn Taylor's relationship with Alexander Scott, they'd probably never dared to offend him in the future. They each had their own secrets. Finn Taylor was sneering inwardly. How could there be such stupid people in this world? I'm going to invite Alexander Scott here and use him to expose an even more shocking secret. Everyone's eyes shot toward Finn Taylor. They all wanted to know what he would choose to do. Will he agree to let Alexander Scott make the decision, or will he refuse? If that happens, it's unlikely for us to come to a decision by today. In the end, Finn Taylor finally nodded in agreement under everyone's watchful gazes. It overwhelmed Quince Larson and the rest that Finn Taylor had agreed to this. That fool actually agreed to it. Has he never suspected why we would be willing to invite Alexander Scott? It's obvious that we are already related and know that we would stand to gain from his appearance. Very quickly, Alexander Scott arrived at the Larson family's residence. Quince Larson even went out to invite him in as a sign of respect. Mr. Scott, I'm the Larson family head. Please don't stand on ceremony. Please come on in. As Finn Taylor listened to Quince Larson, he couldn't help but wonder if the other was stupid. It's one thing to say that to the Larson family, but how can he act high and mighty as the Larson family head in front of Alexander Scott? To put it bluntly, the Larson family is nothing when compared to Alexander Scott Thunderbird, special envoy of Peregrine Hall. If not for me, the Larson family might never have gotten to know Alexander Scott at all. However, he was retarded enough to announce his identity to the other as though they are on the same level. "Mr. Scott, I invited you here because I have a favor to ask of you. Our entire family previously went out on an outing at your park, and we won a prize. Do you think that the prize belongs to the whole family or just to one person?" As Quince Larson said so, Alexander Scott had already walked into the house. Eleanor Larson quickly rushed up and pulled him over to her side. It was obvious that they were already close and knew each other. Everyone knew the result in their hearts. They've invited their own friend. It's obvious how this will turn out. "Oh, I see, Mr. Larson, how do you think it should be split then?" "Mr. Larson, oh, that's me." Quince Larson was delighted that Alexander Scott had been so respectful toward him. He felt as though his status as the family head had been affirmed by Alexander Scott himself, and Alexander Scott was a prominent figure from Seattle. Alexander Scott's approval means approval from high society all over the country. In that case, Quince Larson wouldn't just be well known in San Francisco but the entire country as well. He was overwhelmed with emotions. "Mr. Larson," Alexander Scott couldn't help but nudge Quince Larson when he saw the other giggling. Oh, it was only then that Quince Larson realized how rude he had been. "Mr. Scott, although it's true that he won the prize, it's only because we went on a family outing that he managed to win it. Besides, the money for the ticket came from the family, so it's only natural that the prize should be split within the family." Quince Larson thought he was being logical and rational. He looked toward Alexander Scott, waiting for the latter to affirm his words. However, the other merely shook his head. "No, an individual prize is an individual prize. It has nothing to do with anyone else. Since he filled in his own name when he won, all prizes belong to him alone." Quince Larson had been full of confidence. Never in a million years would he have expected Alexander Scott to give him such a reply. Eleanor Larson, who was standing next to Alexander Scott, was equally taken aback. In fact, she felt much more dumbfounded than her cousin. "I've even given myself to Alexander Scott, yet he's chosen not to speak up for me in such a situation. Alexander Scott wouldn't even have needed to lift a finger to help me, and that was why I had been sure that the other would have been on my side. But what is going on?" Finn Taylor glanced at Quince Larson. "Mr. Larson, where are the prizes? I'll bring them home later." Quince Larson was devastated. "According to the bet we made earlier, these prizes do indeed belong to Finn Taylor's family now. However, those prizes are worth too much to let go of." Yet, Quince Larson didn't dare to act as a sore loser in front of Alexander Scott. He simply tested the waters once again. "Mr. Scott, why don't you think again? Is there no other way to resolve this matter?" Unlike her cousin, Eleanor Larson flew into a rage straight away. "I've already sacrificed so much, including my own body, but I haven't gotten anything in return. Quince Larson has become the family head, while Yvette Larson got the prizes. Only I'm left with nothing. It's such a joke." She naturally felt indignant. "What do you mean by this, Alexander Scott?" Eleanor Larson leapt up and yelled at Alexander Scott by his full name, startling the entire Larson family. Alexander Scott was a prominent figure, not someone the Larson family could look down on. It was clear that Eleanor Larson was dragging the entire family down with her actions. All the Larson family members glared at Eleanor Larson with hatred in their eyes, including Quince Larson. He cared the most about his cousin's relationship with Alexander Scott. The way he saw it, Yvette Larson had been so successful lately all because of her good relationship with the Sullivan family. If he could use Eleanor Larson and get on good terms with the Scott family, he wouldn't need to fear his eldest cousin. But now, Eleanor Larson had ruined everything. "Eleanor Larson, shut up. As the family head, I demand that you apologize to Mr. Scott." Eleanor Larson shot her cousin a deadly glance. "Bullshit. Family head, do you think that everyone should be afraid of you just because you're a temporary family head now? Do you think that we have to listen to you at all times? No wonder Grandpa has delayed handing over the position to you for so long. Quince Larson, you're such a disgrace to the family. Who are you? How dare you question my authority? Have you made any contributions to the family? If you can say even one thing, I'll kowtow to you today." Quince Larson was fuming. "How dare Eleanor Larson say that of me? I'm being humiliated and embarrassed. I'm the head of the Larson family, yet someone has denigrated me like this. I'm going to make Eleanor Larson kneel down and apologize to me." He racked his brains, thinking about the contributions he had made to the Larson family. However, he couldn't even think of one after a long time. "Impossible. That is impossible. I'm the head of the Larson family, so how could I not have made any contributions at all? All of the Larson family members' gazes were glued to Quince Larson as they waited for him to reply. Yet, they were met with disappointment. Alexander Scott stood up and looked at Eleanor Larson. "How dare you talk to me like that, you bitch?" Alexander Scott stood up and slapped Eleanor Larson right in the face. "Are you threatening me? Who are you to do that?" At that moment, the entire room fell into dead silence. What just happened? Yet, Alexander Scott's strong aura frightened everyone so much that they dared not even let out a breath. It was Alexander Scott they were talking about, and he was raging. "You hit me. How dare you hit me?" Eleanor Larson clutched her face, her eyes filled with disbelief. "How dare Alexander Scott hit me? Doesn't he know that I gave my most precious body to him? Yet, he dared to hit me. Alexander Scott, are you mad? Are you going to go against me? Don't you know that I have evidence against you?" Alexander Scott chuckled in the face of Eleanor Larson's threat. He stretched his hand into his pocket and took out a stack of photos. "Are you talking about this?" Alexander Scott spread the photos out for Eleanor Larson, whose face immediately drained of all color. In those photos, Eleanor Larson was stripped naked. Alexander Scott flung those photos into the air. As they fell, the other Larson family members quickly picked them up out of curiosity. The sight of those photos soured all their expressions in an instant. Quince Larson quickly collected all the photos before placing them face down on the table. He then slammed the table and roared, "Eleanor Larson, look at what you've done. You've utterly embarrassed the Larson family." Eleanor Larson was in despair as her cousin lambasted her. "The only reason I had fallen into Alexander Scott's trap was that Quince Larson had taken me to visit the latter again and again. Every time, Quince Larson would find an excuse to leave, leaving me alone in Alexander Scott's house. That was how I had eventually managed to crawl into his bed. Quince Larson had clearly planned for all that to happen, yet he's now pushing all blame and responsibility to me." Eleanor Larson tried to defend herself but couldn't find a good argument. Eventually, she gave up. They had lost in this meeting, they had all lost. The only winners were Yvette Larson and Finn Taylor. Eleanor Larson felt terribly indignant. "My reputation in the Larson family has already been ruined. There is no way of salvaging it." Finn Taylor left with his wife, along with all the prizes. He glanced at the latter, saying, "All these belong to you. I won't let anyone else have them." She shot her husband a meaningful glance. She had gone to look for Hunter Sullivan that day, wanting to find out about her husband's whereabouts. Unexpectedly, Alexander Scott had shown up too. Although they hadn't said anything, Yvette Larson's instincts told her that they were all related. However, she chose not to dwell on it. "Since my husband hasn't told me about it, it means that it isn't time for me to learn about it yet." Ellipsis. The Gold family's residence in San Francisco. Third Master Gold had just instructed his granddaughter to bring Finn Taylor over for a good chat, yet he paused. "Something seems amiss. The reason I didn't know about Finn Taylor's true identity was that the latter didn't want it exposed. Since that's the case, I'm simply bringing trouble upon myself by exposing him now. No, that won't do. Since Finn Taylor wants to put on act, I'll have to go along with him. I can't get in his bad books." "Grandpa, are you looking for me?" Just then, Kimberly Gold arrived. Third Master Gold decided to tweak his plans. "Kimberly, you haven't met Finn Taylor in a long time. Aren't you going to look for him?" Kimberly Gold was frustrated. "I want to, but I don't have a good reason to look for him." "What do you mean? If you're interested in him, I'll surely support you all the way." "Oh right, Aaron Jensen's granddaughter is back. Why don't you take Kelly Jensen out shopping and call Finn Taylor to carry your things for you? It doesn't seem very nice to make Finn Taylor carry my things, don't you think?" Kimberly Gold was thinking about how cold Finn Taylor was to her even when she treated him so well. If she got any fiercer toward him, he might very well just ignore her. "You brat, you've never been in a relationship. Look at how you're on the losing end now. Let me give you some advice. He has to make a move too. Otherwise, there's no way you guys will get anywhere. Do you think Finn Taylor will fall for you just because you're nice to him? You have to make him work for you. Only then will he cherish you. Once he has invested too much in this relationship, he'll have no choice but to stay with you." Although Kimberly Gold was in quite a daze, she still thought that her grandpa made sense. As such, she made a call to Kelly Jensen to ask her out on a date. Third Master Gold and Aaron Jensen were good friends, but that didn't mean that they were equals. Aaron Jensen liked playing chess, but he needed to put food on the table too. As such, their family needed to suck up to the Gold family. In fact, the Jensen family had gotten a lot out of Kelly Jensen's relationship with Kimberly Gold. Of course, the former wasn't going to refuse her best friend's offer. Very quickly, Kelly Jensen arrived at the Gold family's residence. Not long after they began shopping, Kimberly Gold started grumbling about how tired she was. Although Kelly Jensen had some complaints in her heart, she didn't know what was up with her best friend. In the past, the latter had never groaned even after a 5 or 6 hour-long shopping trip. It had only been an hour, yet Kimberly Gold was already looking for a cafe to rest in. While Kelly Jensen didn't understand her best friend, she understood something: there were some things best left unsaid. It would be her fault if she were to delve into something the other didn't want to talk about. As such, Kelly Jensen took the initiative to look for a cafe. Then, they each ordered a glass of milk tea. As soon as Kimberly Gold sat down, she dialed for Finn Taylor. "Finn Taylor, I've sent you the address. I bought a lot of things. Hurry over and help me carry them." Finn Taylor felt that the whole situation was incredulous. Kimberly Gold is the precious young lady of the Gold family. It's impossible that there's nobody to help her with her shopping bags. Even if that's so, she could have simply called for 100 luxurious cars over. Why did she have to call me over? But on account of that luxurious car she had given him, Finn Taylor had no choice but to head over. "Who did you call?" Kelly Jensen asked out of curiosity. "Finn Taylor." Upon hearing that name, Kelly Jensen couldn't help but frown. Kelly Jensen frowned. "Kimberly, you just came over from Chicago, so you might not know that we have someone called Finn Taylor here. He doesn't have that great of a reputation." Kimberly Gold frowned as she listened to her best friend, feeling ill at ease. However, Kelly Jensen hadn't noticed that. She went on about how she was trying to help Kimberly Gold avoid falling into a pit. This way, she would be able to claim some credit. "We have a family called the Larson family in San Francisco. The eldest daughter of that family is Yvette Larson. 3 years ago, she married a useless man, Finn Taylor. Over the past 3 years, he has never retaliated nor rebuked the Larson family even when they beat him or lashed out at him. In fact, he's just a servant who helps with household chores. Sigh, I'm glad he isn't my husband. If I had a husband like that, I'd have killed him a long time ago." The displeasure on Kimberly Gold's face only intensified. Although Kelly Jensen had noticed it, she hadn't thought much about it. She simply thought that her best friend was infuriated at being friends with someone who shared the same name as that piece of trash. It had never once crossed her mind that the friend Kimberly Gold talked about was none other than that piece of trash, Finn Taylor. How was that possible? The two were worlds apart. One was the high and mighty young lady of the Gold family, while the other was just a useless matrilocal son-in-law. If they were friends, pigs could fly. Just as that thought crossed Kelly Jensen's mind, someone pushed open the door to the cafe. He walked up to their table and took a seat. Then, he flung his car key onto the table casually. "Where are your things?" Kelly Jensen was shell-shocked. The person who had sat down was the legendary piece of trash Finn Taylor. "You're Finn Taylor?" Kelly Jensen asked. "Yes." Not understanding what was going on, Finn Taylor answered honestly. "You're that useless matrilocal son-in-law of the Larson family." Although she already knew the answer, Kelly Jensen still posed that question. It seems like I'm quite famous." Finn Taylor's expression darkened. "That bast Quince Larson has ruined my reputation. Now, there are few who don't know of San Francisco's useless matrilocal son-in-law." Seeing that she was right, Kelly Jensen's expression soured immediately. "Stay away from me, I have OCD." Kelly Jensen was from San Francisco, and she had heard rumors about Finn Taylor for the past 3 years. Each rumor was enough to sentence him to death in her heart, but now, that piece of trash was sitting right in front of her. Nothing disgusted her more. "Kelly Jensen, stop it. Finn Taylor is my friend." To Kimberly Gold, Kelly Jensen was just a playing piece with absolutely no significance, yet the latter went on to badmouth Finn Taylor in front of her. This made Kimberly Gold very uncomfortable. Just as Kimberly Gold was about to say something, her best friend's phone rang. The latter stood up to pick up the phone. "I'm out, I'll send you my location." Kelly Jensen returned with a smile on her face. By then, Kimberly Gold had already started chatting with Finn Taylor. The former had no more time to bother about her best friend, but Kelly Jensen was delighted because the one who had called her was none other than her cousin Gregory Jensen. Kelly Jensen was from San Francisco but had gotten to know Kimberly Gold at school in Chicago. Initially, she had been working in Chicago too, but when the Gold family moved to San Francisco, the Jensen family had asked her to move back as well. Kelly Jensen shared a good relationship with her cousin. Since Gregory Jensen hadn't seen his cousin since her return, he was coming to find her now. Knowing that her cousin was coming, she was naturally elated. About 10 minutes later, Kelly Jensen received a message from her cousin saying that he had arrived. She then rushed out of the cafe cheerfully, afraid that her cousin wouldn't be able to find the cafe. Because the cousins hadn't met in a long time, they greeted each other warmly. As Kelly Jensen brought her cousin in, she then added, "Brother, there's someone inside who is Kimberly Gold's friend. I'm not related to him in any way, so you'd better not think that I came into contact with bad company." The Jensen family was strict, and Kelly Jensen despised how Finn Taylor was so useless and lazy and how he was a matrilocal son-in-law who waited to be fed by his wife's family. As such, she wanted to clear the air with her cousin and mentally prepare him. Gregory Jensen was curious about who his cousin was talking about. Why does she sound so serious? As the pair entered the cafe, Kelly Jensen pointed at Finn Taylor. "It's that guy Finn Taylor, the Larson family's useless matrilocal son-in-law. I don't know how he managed to marry Yvette Larson, but he's even become friends with Kimberly Gold now. But a piece of trash is a piece of trash. No matter what kind of friends he has, he's nothing but a piece of trash in San Francisco. I hate this sort of people the most." Kelly Jensen went off on a rant, not realizing that her cousin's face had gone pale. Gregory Jensen knew full well just how vicious Finn Taylor could get. Just a few days ago, the latter had gathered Logan Yates, Hunter Sullivan, Alexander Scott, and Zachary Kennedy just because he had suffered a little humiliation at his mall. How could someone who garnered the respect of the four guardians be a piece of trash? Gregory Jensen was sure that the other was simply laying low. Although he didn't know why the other was doing so, he wouldn't be so foolish as to expose him. He turned to his cousin and lectured her. "Stop it, you'd better keep it to yourself. When did you become so sharp-tongued?" With that, Gregory Jensen headed toward Finn Taylor, leaving his cousin rooted to the spot. At that moment, she nearly exploded in fury. "My cousin called me sharp-tongued just because of a piece of trash. I'm his favorite cousin. What good is that piece of trash? Why is everyone speaking up for him?" Kelly Jensen hated Finn Taylor to the guts. "I'm the young lady of the Jensen family. Why can't she look down on that piece of trash?" With anger bubbling in her stomach, she stomped toward Finn Taylor. "I'm definitely going to find a chance to teach him a lesson so that he'll know just how different we are." Kelly Jensen walked over and sat down quietly. She didn't immediately start speaking ill of Finn Taylor, she merely listened to their conversation carefully. She wanted to pick out faults in his speech. Once she did, she'd definitely put him in his place. But what annoyed Kelly Jensen was that Finn Taylor had made no mistakes. Try as she might, she couldn't pick out any faults in him. By now, Finn Taylor, Kimberly Gold, and Gregory Jensen seemed to be getting along like old friends. Kelly Jensen felt totally out of place. What irritated her the most was that she had tried to join the conversation when they had started talking about something that interested her too. However, the trio had simply ignored her. In fact, Kimberly Gold and Gregory Jensen had explicitly told her to keep quiet and simply listen if she didn't understand what they were talking about. She was rendered speechless, and words failed to describe her emotions. Finally, the trio's conversation came to an end. Finn Taylor said that he was going to go to the washroom, and Kelly Jensen spotted her chance. As such, she tagged along, saying that she needed to use the washroom too. There, she spotted a beautiful young lady who was very well dressed. This young lady was wearing a mini skirt and a sweater, with a red cap on her head. From her appearance, Kelly Jensen was sure that the other was a student, the kind that was a little rebellious and thought she understood the world. Kelly Jensen whipped out a wad of cash and placed it in front of that student. "Do me a favor, and all this money will be yours." The young lady glanced at Kelly Jensen as though she was crazy. The latter then took out yet another wad of cash and stacked it on top of the other. "Is this enough?" This young student's name was Haley Miller. She was rebellious and insisted on wearing what she thought looked cool instead of her uniform. These clothes were naturally terribly expensive, but the price was steep for a student. Seeing so much money in front of her, Haley Miller finally relented. "You'd better tell me what you want me to do first. I'm not going to break the law for you." Being rebellious didn't mean that she didn't have morals. Although she refused to listen to her parents' and teachers' nagging, she was never going to go against the law. "There's someone in the men's washroom. When you go out later, bump into him and say that he molested you, okay?" Kelly Jensen took out a photo of Finn Taylor, and she told Haley Miller her plan. The latter contemplated just how much of an impact this would have on her. But in the end, the temptation of money was too great. That huge stack of bills would be enough to buy her several outfits, so she finally relented. She picked up the money and put it into her bag. Then, she walked out of the washroom and waited for Finn Taylor to come out from the men's washroom. On the other hand, Kelly Jensen simply waited in the women's washroom. She put on her lipstick, thinking about her victory. The moment she heard a blood-curdling scream, she knew she had won. She rushed out of the women's washroom in confusion, her expression filled with bewilderment. It was as though she didn't know anything. "You're so shameless. Why did you touch me?" Haley Miller began her performance and painted Finn Taylor into the bad guy with just a few words. The man in question was stunned. "As soon as I stepped out of the washroom, this woman had purposely bumped into me. Yet, she is now accusing me of touching her inappropriately." Finn Taylor was one who dared to own up to his actions. If he had truly done so, he'd never deny it. However, this was clearly a setup. This was an insult to him. "Young lady, don't spout nonsense without any proof." "Proof? This is the washroom, so there's obviously no cameras. That's why you dared to mess around with me. I'm just a student. What am I going to do for the rest of my life?" By now, Haley Miller had already collapsed on the ground, sobbing pitifully. Emotion surged in Kelly Jensen's heart. She had never expected the random girl she had found to have such great acting skills. Word got out about this very quickly, and Haley Miller's cries attracted a crowd. Amongst them were Gregory Jensen and Kimberly Gold. The pair had only come out of curiosity, yet they had heard that young lady sobbing, saying that Finn Taylor had molested her. Kimberly Gold and Gregory Jensen had full faith in Finn Taylor's character. Given his status, he can have any kind of lady he wants without even lifting his finger. In fact, the precious gem of the Gold family, Kimberly Gold, would even give herself up as long as he asked. But Finn Taylor had never done so. He'd never do something so shameless. Gregory Jensen walked up to the young lady and said, "I have a few questions, you'd better answer me truthfully." Haley Miller was a young girl, and she was naturally terrified in the face of someone like Gregory Jensen, who had such a strong aura. "Firstly, where did he touch you?" Haley Miller was a little fearful as she pointed at her thigh. "All right, here's the question then. Was his hand warm or cold?" "Huh." Haley Miller was stumped by that question. "We've never even touched each other, so how am I to know whether his hand is warm or cold?" But now that things had already progressed to this stage, she had no choice but to answer him. After giving it some thought, she decided that his hand had to be cold. After all, he had just washed his hands after using the washroom. It was cold. It was ice cold, so I remember it well. The moment Finn Taylor heard that, he finally let out a relieved smile. "I've been trained since I was young, so my body temperature has always been on the high side. At times, some even think that I'm running a fever." Finn Taylor reached out and grabbed a man who was watching the scene unfold. "His hand is really warm." Finn Taylor stretched out his other hand to another man, who agreed as well. An old lady who didn't want the young lady to be maligned stepped up. "Who knows if you're all in cahoots? Let me test it out. If I lie, I'll be struck by lightning and die a pitiful death." Finn Taylor didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard that, but he didn't refuse. The old lady grabbed hold of Finn Taylor's hand and felt only warmth from it, so she nodded. "They're right, his hands are warm. You brat, I wanted to prove your innocence, but it looks like you were the one trying to kick up a fuss out of nothing." At that, everyone's eyes landed on Haley Miller. They all wanted to know why she had done so. Just then, Kelly Jensen cut in. Maybe she remembered it wrongly. Nobody would have thought much of Kelly Jensen if she had remained silent, yet she had chosen to speak up. Right then, Gregory Jensen, Kimberly Gold, and Finn Taylor seemed to have understood the situation. Kelly Jensen felt a chill run down her spine as the trio glared at her. Could they have seen through my ploy? But that's impossible. Gregory Jensen turned to Haley Miller and lectured her. "Young lady, this isn't a big deal, but it's no small matter either. If I find out that you were maligning him, I'll strip you naked and throw you out on the streets. You won't even be able to do anything about that. Of course, I'm fair and just. If you tell me who instigated you, I won't make things difficult for you either." Haley Miller was just a young and gullible student who had never faced such threats in her life. She was so shaken that her whole body was trembling in fear. She glanced cautiously at Gregory Jensen. She then quickly pointed at Kelly Jensen and dumped all of the money out of her bag. "It was her shape put me up to this. I don't know anything. Please, I'm begging you. Let me off. I'm just a student." Gregory Jensen glanced at Finn Taylor, waiting for the latter to instruct him on how to handle the young lady. Thankfully, Finn Taylor didn't intend on punishing her. He simply waved her off as Gregory Jensen said, "Scram. Remember not to do such things in the future." After thanking Finn Taylor profusely, she sped off. She didn't dare to stay there for a second longer. It wasn't out of embarrassment but terror. The one who had been threatening her didn't seem that frightening. In fact, his threats sounded like empty words to her. It was the man she had wrongfully accused that felt extraordinary. Finn Taylor, Kimberly Gold, and Gregory Jensen glared at Kelly Jensen. At that moment, Kelly Jensen was terrified. Did I do something wrong? I just don't like that piece of trash. Am I wrong for that? What right does that piece of trash have to stand beside me? She felt that she had done nothing wrong, but Kimberly Gold coldly set her in her place. Gregory Jensen, I'll ask Grandpa to reconsider our family's collaboration with the Jensen family. With that, she turned to leave with Finn Taylor. To be honest, Gregory Jensen didn't really care about that. What he cared about was Finn Taylor's earlier gaze. That cool gaze was something he had only seen in the most successful elitesal of whom wielded great power. Upon thinking back on the incident at the mall, a chill ran down Gregory Jensen's spine. He knew that the Jensen family's days were over, and the culprit was none other than Kelly Jensen. Although he had previously offended Finn Taylor, he had not done so on purpose. The latter had also been magnanimous enough to forgive him. Besides, he had had a good chat with the other earlier, and they had already gotten past their hatred. But Kelly Jensen had now ruined everything. Gregory Jensen didn't want to say anything more. What's done is done. Even if I kill Kelly, I won't be able to turn back time. Now, I can only rush back home and discuss with Grandpa about what to do. Gregory Jensen forcefully dragged his cousin home. Along the way, the latter said nothing. She didn't think that she had done anything wrong, so she tried to make her cousin talk. Doesn't he love me the most? Is he going to sentence me to death just because I made a small mistake and played a prank? That can't be true. Yet, Kelly Jensen flew into a frenzy as her cousin refused to speak to her. Very quickly, the pair returned home. Seeing that the cousins had returned home together, Aaron Jensen's curiosity was piqued. Hey, what's going on? Gregory Jensen simply flung his cousin onto the ground before saying, Grandpa, she set Finn Taylor up and was exposed. Because of that, she angered the Gold family and provoked Finn Taylor too. Aaron Jensen couldn't help but flare up when he heard that. He was good chess buddies with Third Master Gold and Carl Gillies, so the other two had naturally told him all about Finn Taylor's exceptional talent and extraordinary background. However, he had never expected that his family would get into such trouble while the other families were trying so hard to get in Finn Taylor's good books. We're done for. That was all Aaron Jensen said as he plopped onto the ground, his gaze empty. Kelly Jensen had never seen that look in her grandpa, and even she was stunned. That can't be. Isn't he just a useless matrilocal son-in-law? It's not like I provoked some extraordinary figure. Why are they all acting like this? Grandpa, Finn Taylor he's just a piece of trash. Slap. Before she could finish her sentence, Gregory Jensen slapped her viciously in the face. Although Gregory Jensen loved his cousin, he wasn't going to spoil her. Kelly Jensen had made a mistake, one that was about to destroy the entire Jensen family. He wasn't going to tolerate it. Grandpa, I have an idea. When Finn Taylor left, he didn't say anything. That means that he hasn't sentenced our family to death yet. Grandpa, we still have Grandpa Carl and Third Master Gold on our side, so we can probably appease him if we show up with lavish gifts to apologize. After giving it some thought, it seemed like this was the only solution. Kelly Jensen, you have to come with me and personally apologize to Mr. Taylor. Kelly Jensen grew even more confused. I've simply offended a useless matrilocal son-in-law. Why did my best friend abandon me? Why did my most beloved cousin abandon me too? And now, it seems like even Grandpa is going to abandon me. Eventually, Kelly Jensen was dragged along against her will. However, the Pacific Heights neighborhood wasn't accessible to just anyone. Even Aaron Jensen had to wait at the bottom of the hill. The trio was frustrated that they couldn't head up to the peak, much less number 1 Pacific Heights. In the end, Gregory Jensen suggested, why don't we go to the Larson family's residence? Rumor has it that Finn Taylor treats his wife especially well, so it'd probably be the same if we go to the Larson family's residence to apologize. Aaron Jensen sighed, we have no other choice, and it would be better than nothing. As such, the trio headed toward the Larson family's residence. Wait for next part.